pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, Chair. Morning.
Approval of the county board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There are none.
There is no additions or deletions to the agenda. I need a motion, please.
I'll move on that, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion. I have a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Deb, Awards of Excellence, please.
Awards of Excellence. This is one of my favorite times of the year. We have a program in Morrison County that recognizes or allows the opportunity to recognize staff that really go above and beyond, that do a good job, but yet beyond what we expect of them to do. This year we had over 20 applications or nominations. They come in from coworkers, from the public, from supervisors, from all over the place. And there's a small group that looks at those and has that challenging task of narrowing them down. We had customer service folks that excelled and specifically dealt with clients above and beyond. We had folks that were innovative and tried new and different ways of doing business to help us reduce costs or better serve folks. We had individuals that stepped up to the plate when there was a coworker that was out for some reason. We've had a lot of good nominations this year, and it was a tough task to narrow it down, but we've come up with 3 that we're awarding today. And the first is Miss Megan Cummings, if you want to come up. Megan joined us not real long ago. When did you start? Have a seat. August. And sometimes it doesn't take long to recognize employees that really exceeded do well. Megan started working with our DFC program out in Pierce, and it was struggling a bit. Membership was down. It needed some rejuvenation and needed some energy, and boy, we found the right person to do that. Thank you, Megan. You went from, what was the membership when you started for the kids?
We had between 12 and 20 students engaged in the student group.
And last count was 100 and...
We have 153 that have enrolled this year. So,
And I have heard nothing but good things from the leadership in Pierce School District. I've heard nothing but good things from the folks here. And your energy and your dedication and your loyalty to this program is awesome. And Pierce School District in general is glad to have you. You're a great asset to the county, or a great asset to this community. So thank you.
thank you. I'm
what you do.
honored to be recognized.
And I think we all should recognize Megan, and thanks for And here's a little sign of appreciation, but thank you very much. You did a good
And if I
job.
may, please don't leave because we'll have pictures after
Yes.
this.
And Ms. Dee Schaefer needs to come up and say hello and good morning. And Dee's been with us a little longer. How long have you been here? When did you start?
A little over 15 years.
15 years. So we have employees that are brand new that are
16
doing
years in May.
excellent work, and we have employees that have been here a while doing excellent work. And everybody that talks about Dee recognizes the fact that she goes so far above and beyond. She works in our eligibility team and social services in the
Long-term care team.
Long-term care team in that financial work area of social services, and does an excellent job. She makes sure she understands the new regulations. She helps others learn them. You are the go-to person, the person that knows almost everything, I think, is what I'm hearing in that regard. You help folks when they need to be helped. You are a true asset, and those that work with you have recognized it above just numerous times. Actually, you were nominated a couple of different times for this award this year because of what you have continued to do and continued to provide. Both your clients, and you go above and beyond, and your coworkers, you go above and beyond, and everybody recognizes that, and I thank you for that, because it's a big deal, and we'll miss you if you are retiring soon, which I'm hearing, but you do great work.
In the not too distant future.
Yes,
Yeah.
but you
They
do.
keep upping the retirement.
And we'll hang on to you as long as we can, so I'm okay with that. But we appreciate what you do, and thank you so much for the work you do for Morrison County.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And you also required to hang around here tonight.
And Miss Beth, Liz Beth.
Good morning.
No wonder you can change a battery.
She does it all.
And I didn't have to ask too many people about the great work Beth does on a regular basis, but this year we had an RFP go out for the phone system, and I needed somebody to work on that. And I think I told you, I don't know how to do it, you need to do it, and she stepped up and she learned, and that project was huge and continues to be huge, because we will be converting all of our phones, which I think at one count it was about 450 different lines to a voice over IP system. And so in this RFP that we did, we had to, we got what I'm saying and talking about, we had to detail the specs for that. And for something that non-techie people needed to develop, Beth did a tremendous job. And the feedback that we got from the vendors who were in this business regarding this RFP was amazing. They said they've never seen something so complete, so well put together, so clear as to what it is we were looking for. And that's pretty impressive, considering, again, we had to take just bits and pieces from here and there and put something together for a good product for what we were looking for from Morrison County, in addition to everything else she does to make all of us look good on a daily basis and treat the employees great. So thank you, Ms. Lisbeth.
Thank you. I don't think that I couldn't have done it though without thanking her help on the technical aspect of things. But no,
Thank
it
you,
went very well.
Elizabeth.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
should we have photo time now?
I think so. And we have so many employees in Morrison County that do such a good job, and these are just a little bit of an example of where they go above and beyond.
Again?
Again, with us again.
Maybe sit with them. I think I'm gonna do it if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, for definitely sure. Yeah, get you up there so we can see you.
Get you over.
Perfect. Who's first?
Who's first?
Gabby.
Gabby.
Everyone look at me and smile and keep smiling. Good. Keep smiling.
Just keep smiling.
2, 3.
It's Morrison County, smile all the time.
One more.
Perfect.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Deb, for that.
Yes, thank you for allowing me the opportunity.
Okay, next on the agenda, Great River Regional Library. Please come on up.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
We'll get one more chair there for you.
Thank you. Should have done the Karen, sorry.
All right, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you all again. I think you all know who I am. I'm Karen Fonseca. I'm the Executive Director for Great River Regional Library. I wanted to come today to tell you a little bit about how your library services are serving your residents over the past year. And I have with me the library services coordinators from several of your communities. Grace Heschke oversees the Piers Library. Linda Mueller was here with us last year. She's from the Royalton Library. And then Wanda Erickson works in our Upslow branch. So,
Great, welcome.
so they'll be happy to answer any specific questions you have. We'll go over some of the overview of the statistics and some of the projects we've been working on. So in your packet, you'll see the Library Impact Report, which shows a summary of the regional statistics for the year. Some of our areas were down. Collection has continued to drop a little bit. In the physical area, the digital continues to increase. I think we saw like a 19% increase in digital checkouts last year region-wide. And wireless continues to grow exponentially. Many of our communities, the library is the only broadband connection that people can readily access for free. So that's been a really heavily growing area. On the back side of that handout, you'll also see that we had two really big projects we wanted to highlight. One was a grant-funded initiative called the We Play Here Kits that came through a grant from the State Library Services. And that grant allowed us to develop kits that rotate among all the branches to highlight the early literacy skill of play. And play is something we kind of take for granted, but it's something that kids really need to do, unstructured playtime, to learn the storytelling skills that go along with reading. And I know Grace had some really good experiences in her branch with that.
We have homeschoolers that visit the library regularly on Thursday because we're open from 10 until 5, and I'd have a new activity out of the We Play Care kit set up, and they were always excited and eager to see what the new activity was going to be. We even had young elementary kids play with their younger siblings that were toddlers and preschool aged. Yeah, we had a real positive response.
And one of the extra boosts we got out of this project is some of the local communities have seen this as a worthwhile project and have donated additional dollars to expand the reach of that program. So it was something that we're looking to expand over the coming year. And we also included information about our summer reading program, which is one of our major literacy initiatives. We served almost 12,000 children last year in that program region-wide. And later on in the presentation, you'll see the statistics specific to Morrison County, but it is a pretty well-used program out in this area.
Next page.
The next page highlights an overview of our new strategic plan. We spent a lot of time last year developing this. Between July and August, we conducted 12 community meetings, gathering input from a variety of people about what we should be doing about library services over the next 5 years. We also did a user study that reached over 800 people, asking them, how do you use the library? What do you see for us over the next few years? And then our staff formed a subcommittee around core values. We did not have core values part of our mission and vision, and it was something we developed. So patron-centered is our biggest focus area, and all of the other pieces flow out of that, and we'll be making our decisions around those core values of exceptional service, forward thinking, and community focus. And you'll see that over the coming year. On the back side, you'll see the service priorities continue to be literacy, access, and lifelong learning, but we've added organizational priorities of exceptional service, operational excellence, and community focus. And from all of the feedback, some of the major projects that will be going on over the next year include an update to the website to make it more mobile friendly and easier to access, making the catalog a more Google-like search, and creating local action plans so each community will be focusing on a target audience that they are not currently serving as well as they hope to, and allow us to more tailor the services in that library to the needs of the community. So that's something we're actually going to be working on this afternoon. So Morrison County, you can see, has a pretty good number of library card holders as a county. About 26% of the people actually have a library card that's been used at least once in the last 3 years. And that could be used for checking out books. It could also be used for accessing the internet. There are some services that people use that do not require a library card. And then it's also important to keep in mind that it's not uncommon for one family to share a card. So a mom has 3 kids, it may just be one card, but that's a pretty good percentage. We've had some projects to expand the reach of our library card holders, and Grace and Linda might want to talk about some of that here.
Okay. Late in 2015, I was approached by one of the 3 fifth grade teachers at Royalton Elementary. They wanted all their 5th graders to have cards for the express purpose of all the 5th graders have tablets, and they wanted them to be able to download our ebooks from our digital library. And they asked the easiest way for them to all get cards. Well, historically, when we've issued cards to grades, they come in, the teacher comes into the library, gets like 100 of these paper applications. The paper applications go home to the parents fill them out, they bring them back to the teacher brings them back to us. And as you can well see, sometimes things get lost in that process. But Great River Regional Library, the Public Services team has come up with something called off-site registration, where I had to do was send a link to the 5th grade teachers. The students were able to fill out an online application. Once that happened in like a class period of 50 minutes, it was sent back to me, and I was able to issue 78 cards to 5th graders in a very short time. The teacher came back to the library and got the cards. It made one visit for the teacher instead of 3 or 4 visits coming to the library. The students were given the cards. They were also sent home with a Find It brochure, our brochure so the families know what a library has. A letter to the parents explaining to the parents now that the student has a card and what they can do with the card. I've received some feedback from the teachers saying that the students have successfully downloaded ebooks onto the tablets and they're very excited about it. The one negative comment I had was that the library in Royalton is only open 20 hours a week. One teacher wanted to be able to bring the students to the library like once a month, every Friday, because that's when they had like a on-block time. But unfortunately, we aren't open on Friday, so that was the one negative comment I've received.
And Grace, I know, has had a really strong relationship building at the school.
Yes,
as well.
the public school Pioneer, they bring 1st through 3rd grade in May, and we do story time promoter programs, promote the summer reading program. The 5th graders, I do a little scavenger hunt, say, can you find a science book? Give me like the decimal number it would be in, and it goes very well. Holy Trinity brings their 1st through 3rd grade and their 5th grade. And now at the high school level, the new English teacher, Mrs. Menden, promotes them to get their library card renewed in 10th grade or to come and get a new one because they need to check books up from the library. Yes, every quarter they're required to have a library book.
I think the other thing to point out on this particular slide is we had an estimated almost 90,000 visits last year in the Morrison County libraries of Great River. About half of the people are checking out books. And what we found in the user study is most people who come to the library for the physical collection, but they also use the website. And many of the people that come into the library aren't checking out books. So it's a real balance in how our core business is shifting from that physical collection to other services, and we're working on balancing that out.
Mr. Chair, Karen, I have to ask a question. When you say checking out books, are we checking out a book, or are we checking out a book, a physical book with pages, or are we checking out a book on our computer? I guess.
Both. When
Okay.
I say digital library, that's the collection usage that increased by about 19% last
Okay.
year. But
Okay.
physical books are actually the most used service we offer right now, and
Okay.
they continue to be. So
Thank you.
that's where it's really tricky, because there's a lot of demand for these new services, but they cost more, and not everybody's using them. About a quarter of the people who are actually using the library are using the digital library, and 75% are using everything else.
Mr. Chair and Karen, what percentage of the books that you have in the physical library, physical books that they can take out, do you have on ebooks or I mean, I'm just curious, are a lot of the same stuff in both? I'm just wondering.
There are some, the most popular materials are the ones we're most likely to have duplication of, and partly because that's what's available in content. It's harder to buy old materials in ebooks because the publishers aren't always releasing them, and if they are, they're not always selling them to libraries. And when we buy ebooks, we're actually subscribing to ebooks. It's not something we own in the same way we own a book, and the lending policies are different because copyright law applies differently. So it's very complex. We have over 100,000 items in the ebook collection, but it's been a real balance in how many dollars do we want to spend on this growing service that's limited versus something that everybody's using.
Well, and I know my daughter loves to read, and she's always on her iPad, so she's getting books from somewhere. Where would she get books to read on the internet? I mean, is that usually through a library, or do they have to pay for them, or?
A lot of them are paid for,
Okay.
and it's not uncommon to be able to buy an ebook as an individual at a significantly lower cost, like $10 compared to a $90 that a library
I
could
see.
buy.
Okay.
And then there are sites that have free ebooks. We have a Project Gutenberg that has a lot of public domain materials in it that are easier to access than at just anywhere. But a lot of them, especially if it's a Kindle or a Nook, are coming from Amazon or Barnes & Noble. People are paying for that. So the access is limited to the people who can afford to pay.
Okay, interesting.
And it's a nice segue because this pie graph kind of shows you our total circulation, and only 6% of our total circulation right now is digital materials. And it's a little bit different than what we're seeing in academic libraries and school libraries. A lot of those, because they're looking for curriculum that changes more frequently, they're more required to buy more textbooks more often. And Lana can maybe speak to some of that too.
I can, and I've been anxiously trying to. I'm also the school librarian in Uppsala, so I have a kind of a more well-rounded view of the ebook dilemma, shall we call it. Research has recently shown that students from high school through college are preferring print materials. 92% was the research that I saw last week.
Print meaning hardcover books?
Yes.
Okay.
They are not as enamored anymore with e-materials, electronic materials. So as librarians, we have to kind of balance this, coupled with the cost factor. So in school, what I'm doing is buying both print and e-formats. The other thing is children learn differently. Some will learn well with the e-platform, some will not. They need to have that physical book in their hands. And I think we're seeing that played out in public libraries too. I know we are because I see it there too. Then you look at our statistics, digital only 6% of our population, but it's demanding. It gets a lot of press, I think.
Right.
And I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. So I'm kind of more conservative.
Yeah, and I've seen some early studies showing that retention when reading digital materials is different and sometimes significantly less. And so I'm not sure where that research will go, but it's concerning when you think about the learning environment and how much of that is going electronic, that we may be losing something in moving to that format so quickly.
So you're saying, Mr. Chair, you're saying that if I have a book and I'm reading on my screen, I'm not getting as much out of that as if I have an actual book in my hand?
It's possible.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You're not retaining
Oh, you're
as
not
much.
retaining as much. Oh, I'm just,
Everybody learns differently, of
Yes.
course.
But Mr. Chair, what we're also saying is that I could read it here, and I could get a lot out of it, and I could retain it all. Depends on who we are.
Your learning style.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair, I think a lot of that comes from relaxation. You know, some people work on these all day, so to read a book on it, it's probably more relaxing to take a book and put it in your hand and read it. You know,
People
so.
like turning the pages.
Yes, they do. There's that physical contact,
Yeah.
and that helps, that speeds learning. It does something in the brain.
Mr. Chair, it's kind of surprising on the, the 6% or the hard, that it is that low.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and part of it may be supply and demand. There's so
Yeah.
much demand, and it's expensive for us to offer the service. And do we want to offer a copy of James Patterson in the digital format and in the physical format? Or
Really?
is it just one? What's the
Yeah.
better way to meet the patron need with the dollars available?
Any more questions, gentlemen?
I would have one regarding, and I know we had an ongoing issue here in Little Falls with, I think, a couple different individuals checking out CDs from the library and then taking them to the pawn shop and selling them. And, I mean, it got to be 20 or 40. I mean, there was a lot of them that were,
Yes.
and of course, I know the owner very well, and he talked to me about that, and I said, well, call the police and then call the library and take them back, and that's what he was doing. My question becomes is, and the concern I would have with as many as this person was getting and selling is, how many, isn't there a limit as far as how many you can take out? You see what I'm saying? Isn't there, I mean, shouldn't it be 2 or 3 and once you bring them back, you get, I'm just curious.
We've looked at that, and the particular situation you were talking about, I'd like to point out, he wasn't actually checking them all out.
Oh, he
And
was.
so there's limits.
He was checking them all in a different way.
And there's security cameras in the building. I mean, there's only so much you can do if you've got one individual that's going to try to work the system. There aren't limits on the number of materials people can check out. Most people only check out what they need. And so if they get into the situation where they had borrowed that many materials and they didn't bring them back, they'd have a pretty substantial bill and we'd have a way of collecting it. The challenge with that situation is that wasn't actually how it was happening. They were walking out.
Okay, very good. Just-
And it may have been a couple of people working together, trying, so. And it happens once in a while, and law enforcement gets involved, and usually that's what it takes to get it resolved. So.
And luckily, it's rare and unacceptable.
Yes, exactly. Most of the time that doesn't happen. Most people are pretty honest.
Yeah.
Summer reading program, here's your statistics just specific to Morrison County. You can see over 600 children ages 3 to 12 registered for the program. That's a pretty substantial number when you think about the sizes of the schools in this area. We'll be looking to grow those numbers over the next 5 years as one of our strategic benchmarks. So look for more information about summer reading program in the future. And then one of our main forms of funding for library programs is through our statewide Legacy Arts and Cultural Heritage Amendment Grant. You see some promotional materials there for our Bill Jamerson program, which featured a artist who sung around the CCC camps. Grace and Wanda and Linda all hosted parts of his program. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about those programs. And I know Wanda's got some programs that she also offers that were really
He did appear at Royalton, and he was a singer, and he had written a book about he had researched life in the CCC camp, Civilian Conservation Corps, which my father went to in the late 1930s in Cass Lake, Minnesota. And the thing about his program, it brought in a kind of a different audience to the library in Royalton. Most of the people who attend programs are children or people with young children, but this brought in a lot of elderly people, which was good to see. And they kind of walked around the library, and they were a little surprised at what the library looked like now. So it was a very successful program, and I'm just so grateful for the Minnesota Legacy Amendment, because we've had tremendous programs in Royalton that we would have never been able to afford.
I concur with that, too. In Uppsala, I'm all about collaboration between different entities, so I get more bang for my buck. If you can, Bill Jamerson, his program, we collaborated with the Uppsala Area Historical Society, and as Linda said, we had an entirely different group of people attend than what we usually have. And they were really excited to hear him, to see him, and to look at his book. He sold books, which is a good thing. I think the authors like that. In Uppsala, we also did a lot of legacy programming, bringing in authors. It's a big thing that I try and do. I collaborate with the school. I collaborate with any other group that will collaborate with me. We had 4 nationally known authors in Uppsala last year, including Lorraine Snelling and an Uppsala native, Lynn Enger. You might, no, okay. Sometimes there's a spark of recognition. He is a well-known author and has written some excellent books, and I recommend him to you as a Western writer. We also had 2 children's authors, Mike Winnetka and David La Rochelle, who came, and really excited that they were able to come. We also had 8 local authors visit the Uppsala Library, including Ann Albitz, who is a Morrison County native, and Mark Moe. Hey, yeah. My doctor, too. And Abby Meyer, some Little Falls natives. We had local authors, Laurel Klug Johnson, who is an Uppsala native, also come, and 2 others that we used also in the school. So I'm all about collaboration. We want to make things work for a lot of different groups.
So we just wanted to come and thank you for your support of Great River Regional Library Services in Morrison County. As you can hear, they've been very well used, and we're looking to expand our reach into more residents and more collaborations going forward. And I also want to just thank everyone who helped with the community meetings and providing input in the strategic plan. I think we're on a really good track now that we've had so much input in the direction where should we go.
Good.
Mr. Chair, what other counties do you serve?
We are in 6 counties, so it's Todd, Morrison, Wright, Stearns, Sherburne, and Benton. And one of the only systems that can provide seamless service over a 6-county area. You don't have to think about where your library card works and what borrowing regulations will be when you cross into the next county. And that's one of the most powerful pieces of how we do business.
Mr. Chair, do you actually have a lot of people, as an example, from Little Falls that use the Little Falls Library, that actually go to St. Cloud or to wherever, to Royalton, to, it doesn't matter where, other than Little Falls, but as an example, I live in Little Falls, I go to the Little Falls Library, would I go to the Royalton Library? I don't know.
Definitely. Most definitely. We have people who
Really?
live, well, probably more if you live on the edge. Well, we do live, Royalton is at the edge of the county.
So are we.
Because we serve people who live in Rice, usually use the Royalton Library, as opposed to going to St. Cloud.
Okay.
Bolus, of
Okay.
course.
Sure.
We have, some people do, who usually use the Royalton Library, they will come and say to me, well, I checked this out in Little Falls, and they kind of have a look of shame on their face. Like they,
We rub that in.
Right. Right, they were cheating on me or something. But yeah, and that is one of the beauties of the system, that they can go from library to library. I've discovered since working in working in Royalton, that it's kind of a bedroom community to St. Cloud that I was never usually aware of before I started working there. Many people live in Royalton but work in St. Cloud, so they'll check out a book in St. Cloud but return it in Royalton.
Oh, okay.
And of
Okay.
course,
I
there's
didn't
no
know that.
fine. It just kind of
Just how it works.
flows so smoothly.
Well, good, good.
One of the other services that we offer is the ability to borrow items from just about any library in the state of Minnesota, and actually in the United States. And that's offered to us virtually free of charge. So anyone could get anything from anywhere.
Interesting.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Again, I know another services that you guys offer, if somebody does not have a book, you can call or put it online and it can be delivered to peers, Upsala, Royalton. I think that's a great service. Plus, just getting to know what you librarians do, you keep up with the times, and it's exceptional work what I see, so I really commend you for what you do. I know you have challenges, has been brought up, you kind of lose, you look at the numbers when kids get into high school, how do you bring them back in there, but you're always open, and Karen's always open to new suggestions and that sort, so you're valuable to our county, no question about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Karen, you don't have a card.
Have a good day, drive safely.
I've got a few.
Perfect, here, I got it, Karen. Okay. Thank you
Very
very
good,
much.
thank you,
Appreciate
Carrie,
it.
very kindly.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Sheriff's report.
Morning, Sean.
Morning, John.
Sean?
Good morning, Sheriff, how are you?
Good morning, good. How's everyone today?
Good.
Good, thanks for asking.
Could you tell if there was a full moon yesterday by chance?
I don't know if there was or not. I know the night before there was.
Well, there was last night.
So I have the January monthly report in front of myself and on the screen for you guys to observe. And I'll just go through some of the highlights. So the number of complaints received in January was 842. That was the total number of complaints, to include non-criminal and criminal. The criminal complaints, 75, and we had 59 of those 75 cases which were cleared. Non-criminal complaints was 767. You can see our drug investigations. We had 4 controlled substance agency assists, and we had 2 possession of marijuana, drug paraphernalia, synthetic cannabinoids, which is all characterized together. As far as our drug awareness, we did some presentations in January to include, it's not listed on here, but we were at the Little Falls High School. We did a presentation to the staff, kind of talking about synthetic marijuana and what to look for, and as far as what to look for, and they had some instances there where they just wanted our staff there to update them with presentation on marijuana, so that's what we're there for. We also did a presentation to some senior citizens in the city of Little Falls, and we also did a presentation to social workers, mental health workers, and public health workers here locally at our government center. So we're trying to get out more and do presentations for people who want to know more about this. So,
If I may,
Yep.
I watched the news last night or whatever, and it was down in cities, that one tragic young lady from Woodbury, she took a synthetic, but it's almost like it's available at these chop shops, or they call them, or something like that, and it's amazing that you can buy marijuana, types of LSD. I don't know, is there some place in Hope in our county not doing that?
You know, what it is locally, when I talk to our drug task force guys, these are guys that are dealing with informants, you know, on a daily basis and getting all the information. So locally, what I've been finding out through them is that the synthetic marijuana, the K2, a lot of the components is getting shipped from overseas, okay? And then what they do is they spray this chemical that's coming from overseas, they spray this plant with this chemical, as well as other mixtures that you can get from your local Menards, like an acetone base, like an alcohol base, which can be, these liquids can be put into like a fertilizer sprayer, and then all you do is you spray the plant. And of course, you got all these components and mixtures involved, you're gonna have some side effects. And unfortunately, I've been to a medical myself, where I've seen, there was a person that got called in as a seizure, but little did we know till after the fact, you know, till the ambulance crew escorted her to the hospital. We found out later on that she was given some of this K2 spice. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's just getting stuff overseas, but then getting products that you can get locally here at Menards, and that's what we get. So it's just trying to get the awareness out to people. And I know with our Facebook page, we recently updated that as well, just throwing information out there, and we're encouraging parents and people just to be aware of what's going on and what to look for. So, believe it or not, I did I don't have this listed as well, I apologize, but I did a talk for the seniors at the Little Falls Senior Center regarding active shooter. You know, it's just stuff that's going on around us. Might not be our state per se, but it's going on, and it's good to engage in conversations with people and give them some alternatives if something was to happen, just to get people thinking. So,
And Mr. Chair, if I could just comment on that, I am anticipating you to say that that is a hit, that the seniors appreciate that so much, to be able to be told up front that things like this actually do and can happen, and certainly in this community. Not that it's an everyday occurrence anywhere, because it hopefully isn't, but it probably happens every day. But to have everybody in small town USA, call it whatever you want to, in our community, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old that go to a senior center, that can actually hear from the chief law enforcement officer of the county that things like this happen, and that you need not be afraid of it, but you need to be aware that it can. And I've got to tell you, I very much appreciate that, Sheriff. Thank you.
you bet, Commissioner. One thing is we talk about knowing your environment, and that's true for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're a school teacher, it doesn't matter if you're a commissioner, it doesn't matter if you're a teacher. You need to know your work environment. And it was kind of funny because the senior citizens, they said, well, geez, some of us are in walkers, some of us are in canes. But, you know, then you point to the wall and say, well, look there's a fire extinguisher. If you need to, know your environment, know what tools you have, and use them. You could save someone else's life, if not your own. So good point. Okay, getting to the criminal complaints for January, we had 75 criminal complaints. 9 of those were assaults. And instead of going through all of them, I'll just kind of highlight the most, I guess. So we had 9 assaults, 5 of those were domestics, and 4 of those were actual fights. I'll point out the family, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, which would be, I think we're looking at 11%. And I'm just pointing that out because that's actually what's been mandated now from social services to report to law enforcement. So
The change in child protection laws is
Correct.
what you're referring to.
yeah.
So just kind of.
Would that be like a domestic family
Well,
under that? Or?
what it is it's 4 neglect and 3 malicious punishment. So neglect could be anything from, you know, these parents, their kids aren't getting to school on time. So something social services would normally just deal with, now it's getting passed on to us. And then our investigators will look at it and say, okay, is this something where we actually need to respond and follow up on? Or is this something we just document because it's mandated to come to our attention?
And Mr. Chair, if I could remember some of those ripple effects that we talked about with law changes and about how there were dollars that came into our county to help fund additional social workers in the child protection area, and how we said, that's great, but there's going to be ripple effects throughout our agency. And you know, Sheriff is pointing that out right now, that now there are actions that need to happen as a result of those law changes, and keep in mind they're criminal complaints. And so if they are to be prosecuted, that will impact Brian's office, and so there are ripple effects, and they are real, and that's okay. Sometimes those laws are good, but it does increase the cost of how we do business, and just wanting to point that out as well.
Yep, so normally, in this case, for the month of January, is 8 extra complaints that got brought to our attention. Moving down, and I apologize, I don't have this, but it's 10, I think it's the purple, so it's gonna be theft, which is, I believe, 13%. So we had 10 thefts, and 9% underneath that, a couple is probation violations. So we had 7 probation violations, but in that classification, we actually had 1 fail to register, so that's a sex offender who violated probation because they didn't register properly. And 6 other ones were just classified as probation violations. So if you move down, we have 140 traffic citations. 13 of those were speed, which is the 9%. And you can see a consistent pattern. 77% is going to be in the light blue, and that's going to be our verbal warnings, which were 108. So 108 out of 140 traffic citations were verbal warnings. Any questions on any of that?
And then the percentage of tickets that you gave for speeding, those would have been people probably that had warnings before, or it was so excessive, or what?
Correct. So I think you hit the nail on the head. If it's excessive, where I like to bring up scenarios, so should we use that again, or?
Why wouldn't we?
So let's just say you're going 80 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone. That's going to be excessive. So, you know, it really doesn't matter if you had a warning before or not. We're going to look at this as, well, this is, you know, way over the limit. You're putting yourself and other people at risk, so you're more than likely going to be getting a ticket.
Oh, okay.
But in the most case, yes, if there's been previous warnings through our records management system, and we find out that, oh, you know what, they were just warned, you know, maybe 2 months ago for the same thing, for speed, then of course that's going to, it's going to get involved in our decision process whether or not you're going to get a ticket. The next page is a 2-year comparison of January 2015 and current last month, January 2016. So you can see our criminal complaint, our total complaints went up 842 to 644. Moving over to criminal, our criminal complaints went up by 2, and our non-criminal complaints also went up. Our civil process went down, our drug investigations actually went down a little bit, and then you'll see our total inmates went up. And a lot of that is just the housing of other county inmates, to include Cass County.
Busy time for the sheriff's office.
Yeah. The following page, I'll just kind of highlight some of the averages. So the total inmates, we averaged 45 inmates for Morrison County in the month of January. We averaged 11 for Becker County, and Cass County we had 10, St. Louis 1, and the total amount of inmates that we averaged, to include Morrison County and all the other surrounding counties that we housed, was 68. And then the only other thing I'll probably highlight is just the out-of-county inmates. So the number of inmates held for other counties was 64, and we collected, revenue that was collected from out-of-county inmates was $38,305. Any questions on any of that? Just a couple things to highlight. Our Cass County, Morrison County jail contract went into effect on February 1st, 2016, where we're now housing up to 15 inmates for their county. Our full-time deputy positions, we actually started the interview process yesterday. There was 12 internal applicants. So we got a good, good internal candidates to choose from, so we did not go external. So the interview started yesterday, and then they broke it down between yesterday and today. So we'll have a decision fairly quick on.
Mr. Chair, so there were 12 internal candidates?
Correct.
Help me understand that you have 12 people who work in the jail or dispatch or whatever that are licensed peace officers?
Or part-time.
Yep, so we have,
Okay.
part-time intermittent, but we do also have people that are working up in the jail who recently received their posts as well. So since it's internal, it could be anybody from those departments.
Cool, a
Yeah.
lot of options, good.
Yep.
Good.
And then you would just backfill them if there was.
Correct. Yep.
Mr. Chair. Sean, could you keep me some data on, when you hire these two people, on things that you've achieved?
Sure.
That if you wouldn't have had them, you wouldn't have been able to do?
Sure.
So that I can help justify why we had two more deputies and what it'd do for us. And I know you're filling a time slot, but you were also kind of talking about drug enforcement and
Correct.
things like that. So if a guy could just keep a little log of what happened when we did that.
If I could, Mr. Chair, if you look at some of the data, just in this month alone, there were 200 extra total complaints.
Yep.
That's a lot when there's 800 total. Last year, we had 600 to deal with in 1 month, now there's 840 to deal with. So that, in addition to some of these other more specific items, I think is important to keep in mind. Look at how busy that function is and how different the world is from year after year in terms of the number of people calling for assistance regarding criminal or non-criminal complaints. So it's
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
that's actually huge, because nowhere does it say a critical figure on any one of these calls. When I say critical, life and death.
Correct.
Life and death and a mailbox murder are two different things, totally. But it doesn't spell it out at all what they are. So when we talk about 200 additional complaints, not only is that 200 more things that are happening, but nobody knows what the level, and we don't need to, that's your business. Nobody knows what the level of those 200 extra things can be,
Right.
or what they are.
Mr. Chair and Sean, I want you to know how much I appreciate when there's a major issue that goes on in my district, when you let us know and give us heads up in case we get calls or whatever. So I
Sure.
appreciate that awareness, that notice, so thank you.
Okay. Yep. The only other thing is, we're still striving for dispatch. I'm just gonna lay it out there that
We're still striving. That's good.
we're still striving to get our full-time position so we can go 24/7 dual coverage. I will mention this, Commissioner Jelinski, you probably know as well, there's a lot of time that goes into trying to train someone to get through this process. And I've mentioned it to my staff, and I'll mention it to you guys if I haven't before in the past, but I've held a lot of jobs at the Morrison County Sheriff's Office. And instead of going through all of them, and I will tell you that dispatcher is by far the hardest job I've ever had. That being said, it takes a special person to get through that training, to be able to answer all these calls and be able to multitask and do their job effectively. So, we've kind of washed out a couple people, they didn't make it through the training. And when you have, 2.5, 3 months invested in somebody, that's a lot of time. So what we've done is, I've came before the board, got prior approval to get where we need to for that 24/7 dual dispatch. But that being said, with the people that kind of washed out, it's kind of a continuous basis, putting people in that chair. And now we currently have 2 people going through the training process. So we'll get there. It's going to take some time, and I just wanted to update the board to let you guys know where we're at.
Mr. Chair, Sean, do people go to school for that, where it's actually for that? Or not? Is it law enforcement, a broad spectrum? Or is it for because I agree, dispatch has got to be one of the hardest jobs.
Well, and Commissioner Jelinski might weigh in, but what we do as Morrison County is there is no 2-year degree, 4-year degree required. However, once we get you in our system, we start sending you off to different schools. That's what we're trying to do, and that's kind of why we built up our tuition for school, because it's important, and it's changed from the day Commissioner Jelinski sat in dispatch to the day I sat in dispatch. I had one monitor and maybe multiple buttons to push, but now we're talking multiple screens and multiple phone lines coming in, and just everything you need to know. It takes time. So on our end, we try and give these people the education.
Are we training people for other counties too? Is that a possibility, And which would be sad, or are other counties having the same dilemma we have, is that for getting dispatchers? Because again, probably like a traffic controller.
Yep. It's a good question, Mr. Chair. What I find out talking to other sheriffs is that, we're not unique. We're not alone. We're kind of in the same boat. I do find that it's kind of hard to keep the part-time intermittent people around. Let's face it, if there's an open shift on a holiday or a weekend, what's the incentive for them to work? They're not getting time and a half. They're not getting any holiday pay. So what we really want to do is just focus on full-time personnel now, get them up to speed, and just really focus on that before we turn the light on more part-time staff.
Part-time's hard, Mr. Chair. I mean, there are more jobs open all over the place. There's a substantial amount of our workforce that's retiring. We've talked about this, and we're going to continue to talk about it. And you're going to see it today. We've had 2 or 3 retirements that announced in the last week. It's going to continue to happen, and that isn't just happening here in Morrison County. It's happening in other counties or other industry. So staff turnover is something that didn't happen back in 08 and 09, where everybody was hanging on tight to the jobs that they had because the economy wasn't as good. They're moving, and that means folks here will move either because they're retiring or because there's opportunities other places. So not unusual, not unexpected in those difficult jobs, those things that are maybe more unique or more specified with education and things like that are even more difficult. And so we're working with it, and I think Sean's right to try to get full-time benefited positions are more attractive than, you might work here and there and it's not necessarily predictable. It's tough.
Mr. Chair, excuse me. Mr. Chair, if I may comment on Commissioner Wilson's statement of training, if you will. There is nothing in the state of Minnesota, nothing that says a dispatcher has to be trained to this level. There is no school that I'm aware of, and I just came back from a visit with Alexandria Vocational Technical Institution about 2 weeks ago, where I sat with the law enforcement people and discussed the very topic. They actually will show a 40-hour class that will highlight different things. That's it. There just isn't anything in the state of Minnesota. Now, I will tell you, with the emergency services boards and so on and so forth throughout the state, education is becoming more and more of a priority. And as the sheriff said, Morrison County is not alone. Other counties go through the same exact thing because of the demand of the job that we're talking about. There's going to be a day, there is no doubt in my mind, that scales, dollars and cents scales are going to change, because in order to find people to do this demanding job, you're gonna have to start paying these people to do it also.
Correct.
So it's a big thing, and I'll compliment you, Sheriff, on where we're going with it, but truly, and I'm aware of it, it's baby steps in order to make it happen, so.
You're correct, Commissioner. That's about all I have for the monthly report of January, unless there's any questions for me.
Mr. Chair, the general public, it's nice to see that you struggle with this, because they expect somebody to be, when they call 911, they expect an answer. They don't realize what you go through to find people to make that happen. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Mr. Chair, I can't stand it, I have to make another comment. I can't. And what we're talking about is the technology of today. Some of us may have seen a news release on the television news real recently about Next Gen 911, which is another piece to the puzzle that's going to happen in the sheriff's very own dispatch center. I'm very aware of that. And what that's going to do, sooner than later, probably this fall, will go live. Don't have a date or anything like that, to where kids, so I'm gonna take myself out of the equation a little bit, kids are gonna text to 911. It's gonna be another one of those puzzles, another one of those monitors, if you will, somehow or another. Don't ask me how it's gonna work, but it's going to work. There has been such a process in the building of the road, if you will, to get this thing going. And right about now, we're connecting the bridge, and it's gonna happen sooner than later. And I wanna emphasize on sooner. It's gonna happen, so it's just another one of those things. I think that's it, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anything else, Sean?
I do have other business, I guess, but, I guess the other business was in regard, or in reference to the planning session that I was recently at, regarding the update maintenance of the Morrison County Jail. And we talked about it at the planning session, and how I would utilize the money for this project from the jail inmate service account reserve. I'm sorry, from the reserve which is assigned to the jail programs. And again, the estimate that we were given by the contractors was $67,927.62, which included paint, ceiling repairs for ceiling tiles. The mirrors we talked about, some of the mirrors in the holding cells were kind of sketched and scratched, have to be replaced. And some of the carpet we talked about was snagged and kind of loose, so it needs to be replaced as well.
Mr. Chair, when we talked about that, Sheriff, if you would include, this is not only a DOC recommendation, but it's one of those issues where, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't get it fixed today, it's not going to be a recommendation tomorrow. It's going to be a, you will do this.
Correct. As of right now, it's a recommendation by the DOC. The DOC at some point could state, you know, this needs to get done, and they could, you know, more than likely stop or hold us from having other inmates come in as well. So we want to go with their recommendation, and I want to say the jail was built 1991, and there hasn't been much maintenance since then. So it's one of those things that it just needs to get done, and hopefully the sooner the better, because these contractors are able to come in now and take care of this.
If I may, Sean, some people will ask, why don't you have STS right there, why don't you have them help you?
We're actually going to help them, or I'm sorry, help them. We're actually going to have them come in and help us and assist with the carpeting. But there's certain things they can't do regards to the painting because of the epoxy. We really want to get professionals involved and make sure that's done properly as well.
Mr. Chair, what we need is a motion to approve the funding from the jail program reserve fund not to exceed, I'm gonna go with 70, because if I try to get an exact number.
And this is not in our minutes though, or is that, I mean, should have been in here, the dollar amount? I didn't see.
He reported it,
Well,
I guess.
understand it, so it doesn't need to be.
It will be reported when we do the
okay.
minutes,
Mr.
yes.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we go with that request.
Yeah, do we have a second?
I would second that.
Any more discussion, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, any business requires upkeep, and there's a lot of issues. This has been 25 years since the jail has been built, and there's a lot of needs. There's rust on the cells, there's locks, there's all kinds of stuff that has to be taken care of. So it's just a matter of doing business, and it is in the reserve, which is a very positive thing, so no need to do special levy dollars for it or anything, so good stuff.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, and Sean, in our planning session, you showed us pictures and everything of all the areas, and there is rust coming through, there's doors not working. Yes, we need to keep things up, so.
And
Commissioner
Mr. Chair,
Johnson?
yeah, I'm glad you're using Sentence to Serve for what you can use them for, so that's a good thing.
Any more discussion, gentlemen? This will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, before we go any further, there probably is a percentage of people out there in the public that are saying, so there's a little rust, so you have a scratched up mirror, so there's a little paint chipping. They're inmates, they're prisoners. Am I correct, Sheriff? And then we still have to fix it? What's the story with that?
You're correct. Here's the thing, the environment that they're in now, you know, we have carpet that's loose, so if anybody goes in there, it's possible to trip, fall, so now you have a hazard. The rust is starting to come out through some of the door hinges, it's one of those things where you can tell by appearance, it's just continuing to get worse. So it's things that are really visible, not only that it can be hazardous, but also we're going to stick a lot more time and money into it if these things don't get done right away. So things are just continuing to get bad, and it's been addressed. And again, it's not the entire gel, it's just certain cell blocks. So I think getting to these projects as soon as possible and updating them is going to be beneficial for everyone.
Mr. Chair, and when we go out to get contracts for prisoners to come here, their authority comes here and looks at our jail, and if it's not kept up, they're not gonna bring them here when they can take them somewhere else. I mean, you're selling something.
Correct.
You know, so you need to keep that stuff up.
And gentlemen, we addressed this too at the planning, but why not just have a cement floor?
Well, there was some different options regarding that. I think DOC has certain requirements when it comes to the flooring itself. So we, of course, have to go by their recommendations.
Mr. Chair, in order to own and operate a jail and be in that business, we have to follow certain rules, whether we completely agree with them or not.
And I say, we discussed this all, and that's why I just
Correct.
brought it up again.
Yeah.
You know, just to show that this has been something that we thoroughly looked at.
Mr. Chair, I believe that Lieutenant McKissick addressed that carpeting as noise, as something that.
Oh, sound barrier.
Without having that sound barrier, and he's right, it's astronomical, the amount of noise that that is up there.
Correct.
All right, with that, any more discussion? If not, it'll be a roll call. Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion carried.
That's all I got. Thank you.
All right.
Sheriff, thank you very kindly for your time.
Have a good day.
You guys too.
We're kind of falling behind here, so we're really gonna have to step it up.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering who's
I'm sitting there going, give him 5 minutes.
Oh, I did.
All right, social services, please.
I like that, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
That's a good point.
You're up first, Benny.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioner. I'm here to, on behalf of Mr. Bold and Social Services, the adult
Could you
unit.
state your names, Susan?
I'm sorry.
All right.
Penny Pesta, Adult Social Services Supervisor. I am here to request a new position for the adult unit, which has been discussed in the past 2 planning meetings by both Mr. Bold and then 2 hospital administrators who was here the last planning meeting. The project aims to address the prescription drug and abuse and overuse. Initially, this was brought to the attention by South Country Health Alliance, who was concerned that 30% of their patients had over 8 prescriptions prescribed to them. So planning between public health and social services, looking at how to help resolve this. Since then, the hospital has become involved and collaborated, applied for a grant, and received that grant. Care team was put together, including a physician, a social worker, a pharmacist, and then also the nurse, the registered nurse. This group has, since they have started, has really had some really pretty significant success in a very short period of time. They are dealing with individuals who are voluntarily coming to them and saying that we are going to stick with one doctor and we're going to stick with one pharmacy so that we can feel better, do better, and be a member of our community. They currently have 112 patients that they are working with on care plans, and with a total of 519. So there are still 407 patients waiting to get on a care plan and be a part of this program. With that information, we are looking and requesting to add an additional social worker, full-time position for this team to continue to work on this project.
I would like to have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
Now, any discussion?
Mr. Chair, and how will this, Penny, how will this position be funded?
This position will be fully funded by the grant at this time, and then the Min Choices revenues that are
So there are the
available.
dollars there to fund it at this point?
At this point, there are, yes.
Very good, thank you.
And then, Mr. Chair, I missed it. It'll be funded by the grant and Min-Choice? Or the grant, once the grant is done, then Min-Choice? I missed that.
Sure. As I'm understanding, that it will be funded by the grant, and there is hopes that there will be additional grant dollars. Right now, the hospital has just put in a pre-application for a prescription drug project, which would give them an additional $420,000. In addition, she has been in contact with Congressman Rick Nolan that has agreed to approve funding, legislative funding for this year to sustain the SIM grant for another 2 years.
And Mr. Chair, my understanding was that they'll also be working on Min-Choice's assessments, which when the position works on that, there's revenue that we can capture from the federal or state, I forget how that flows through, but
Okay.
from funding from a different government
So it's a
source.
piece here and it's a piece
Yep.
there. Very good.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one question. The grant we have right now, when does that end?
December of 2016 is when it is officially scheduled to end.
Through the year.
Through the
Okay.
year, however, it had started late, that
Yeah.
the awards did not come out until April of 2015, so we're hoping that they will extend those grant dollars to be able to be utilized.
Mr. Chair, if I'm not mistaken, now, this program was half-time before, right?
Correct.
And it's been a great success, and that's why we're going on for full-time, and it's all grant approved, and so the finances are not coming out of the county, the hospital and the.
It's a joint effort
Yes,
with that.
yeah, and it's been very successful.
has been very
And that's why we're
successful.
enlarging it to a full-time position.
In addition to the program, the prescription drug program, they work on Min-Choice's
Yep.
assessments too, which we've had numbers presented about the increase of clientele or the increase of time that's put into that once that change or since that change has been made. So it's kind of twofold and works, we found, quite well in the hospital also in coupling those tasks and having access located at the hospital has been great.
Well, and that's what's really important sometimes. I mean, we start out with a half-time person to see what a position and what's gonna happen. And when it is successful, that's when we know that we need to follow up with this to keep it going. When it's not successful, we drop it and we try something different.
Exactly.
Yes, I can tell you that even yesterday I was at the monthly meeting with the Drug Task Force that has been kind of revitalized since this program has started and included the Sheriff's Office and PD, different community members, hospitals, social services, public health. And every time I sit in there, they ask, when can we get a full-time social worker? Because they see the value and they know that the work is there. And they really are invested in having that collaborative relationship to look at the whole person to meet their needs.
Commissioner Mauer.
Mr. Chair, you know, what's so unique about this is the collaboration, like you said, between St. Gabe's, the pharmacies, Coburn's. I mean, this is really good stuff. And in fact, I asked a question at the planning session about, well, can we get Walmart involved and what's the other one, the drugstore up here on the left before Coburn's, and get all of this stuff involved? Because the more communication you have in the collaboration in addressing these issues so clients don't doctor shop or hop from place to place to place to continue to beyond these opiates or whatever the issue is, that's so important. So this collaboration with St. Gabe's and social services is just very important.
Absolutely.
And two, you know, the numbers that you identified, there was 200 and some already for this. And again, there's people like a waiting list or something like that. So again, yeah, it's very important, I personally think so. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That should do it for Penny.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Very successful. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good information.
Thank you.
I'm up.
You're up.
Okay. Just want to make sure by looking at the board there, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Melanie Erickson. I supervise the Children and Family Services Unit. And it's my understanding that Mr. Vole did bring to planning our resignation that we have in our unit in our Children's Mental Health Case Management Services. And I'm here to ask today to fill that position. That is an existing position, not a new position.
Mr. Chair, I'll move on that.
And I would need a second.
I would second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion, please?
We talked about it at planning and just filling one that resigns, so.
And Mr. Chair, if we look at how this is paid, okay, these are dollars that we recoup, and actually, these are mandated services that we as a county provide, I believe, for these services. So, and there is funding to pay for this position, so.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing one word that jumps out at me that I'm not gonna say no to, and that's gonna be children. Children's mental health social worker, we're replacing one, it's a no-brainer. The children don't have anything to say about this. They need the help, so we need to do that for them.
Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate the support of the board. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good
Melanie.
day, Mel.
Alrighty, public health. Oh, she disappeared.
Well, then maybe we should take a 5.
Should we?
You guys want a
Yes,
5?
please.
Alrighty.
Good.
Darren's gonna have to wait until the Sentinel Landscapes.
We are
I couldn't be
skipping
there.
public
Yeah,
health.
but she didn't have, no, she didn't have anything.
She was
to
here.
report.
I can't
She was here too,
before
for
we're meeting
meetings.
with all the different departments.
So, yeah, we don't have anything.
Amy's going.
That's what I thought you said.
Good morning, Darren. Good morning, everyone. It's just me. Amy's at a meeting right now.
This is just me stuff.
It is you, Darren.
It is me.
Yes, yes.
So just one thing today. I have my feedlot annual report from 2015. This we do every year, so you've seen this before. It's the same type of form. All it is basically our numbers. They haven't changed since 2014 was our big update year. So 618 is still our registered number. As you see, the number of inspections that were conducted, you'll see that's around 54, and some other various inspections and everything that basically the feedlot program does and that the state is interested in, we report on this form. So this is it. Do you have any questions specifically on any of the numbers or what some things mean? Otherwise, it's very similar to what we did last year.
You kind of rotate these, so it's like every 5 years the inspections are done for these, is that how it works?
Well, we develop a work plan, which you saw last month. That work plan dictates where we go. And I've been trying to do that based on a township basis, and then also getting to the sites that we've never been to before to formally inspect. So there are several sites out there in Morrison County that have never had a complete inspection done.
And like, never? Or like,
We've been to them to do our level 3 inventory, which was in 2000 when the rules came about that we have today. We did a inventory of all the farms that met the criteria to be registered. So we've been to all of them, but formal inspection to do that, that hasn't necessarily been done on every single site.
Okay.
So we're still working on that, but as the years progress, obviously the number dwindles. But township basis is how we've been doing that, and that's why in those 5 townships with the nitrate levels, those are my priority townships right now, and that's kind of how we move around or how we pick our sites where to go to. And then obviously if someone proposes construction, it's an automatic, we're looking at everything, and that's where you see a lot of, we issued, I believe it was 9, when you get to construction permitting, you'll see the 8 construction short form permits. Those are for construction at greater than 300 hours. So, obviously all of those are an inspection, whether or not they've been inspected before, or if they're in the priority township, one is conducted there. And the same with the interim permits where we had 5 of those. Those are your fix-it permits essentially. Those are the, either I inspected them because of a random, they met the criteria, or they were proposing construction. We found an issue that needed to be addressed, and they get a permit that way, so we can identify timelines of when they need to be fixed and all that kind of stuff. So that's what those permits are for.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Just for the record, Darren, the form that we're looking at is a Minnesota form. This is not a Morrison County form.
Nope.
This is something that we have to comply with.
Yep. Every delegated county completes this as part of their annual report. This also, as you see in the bottom, the number 130.38, that number corresponds to performance credits. So the county receives additional funding that's based on that number is attached to a dollar value. and whatever that dollar value is, then we receive additional funding on top of our delegation agreement funding that we get
Very good.
for the total amount of feelings.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, just as a reminder, feedlot program is something that we choose to administer, so we're able to work with producers locally instead of having that state, the state of Minnesota offer that function. So it's a nice way and good way to really keep local that service of really working with our producers instead of shuffling them to a state agency.
I would
that
be really
sometimes isn't.
surprised to find any farmer in Morrison County that would rather have somebody from Minneapolis come in and do the inspection versus having Darren. And that's no disrespect to anybody from Minneapolis. I'm just saying that I'd be really surprised to find one that would rather do it.
Keeps
that
it a
way.
lot more personal.
Very much.
Personal, and it's a one-stop shop. You know, all your state permitting and your county permitting, if we're doing county permitting, either from a public hearing process or from a land use permit, obviously, it's all taken care of by, me at the kitchen table, going through what they
Absolutely.
need, so.
You
yeah.
bet. Yep.
Any more questions, gentlemen?
Mr.
So
Chair,
moved. Oh, I'm sorry.
in the spring, it seems like sometimes we get phone calls about they're not following their permits, not following what they're supposed to be doing. Is there a time when, if it's every year this happens, is there a time when you just start finding people? Or do you always have to, somebody makes a complaint, now you have to tell them that they need to get back into compliance? I
Sure.
guess,
Yep. So we kind of have a similar process where we start with what we call a letter of warning. That's our formal letter, and then we have that's really step one. If it's the point where it makes it big enough to make it
That's step
a
one.
letter worthy versus a verbal warning.
that's step one every year?
Pretty much. Now, if it's a repeat offender, then you'll get a notice of violation. That's the next step in the process. The next step after that would be transferring over to the state.
Okay.
The state has the power to fine and administrative penalty orders and all that kind of stuff. We as a county typically don't assess a penalty for having a stockpile violation or something like that within the delegation agreement power.
Thank you.
I need a motion for this review of the annual report.
moved.
And a second? Any more discussion, gentlemen? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for all you do, Darren.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren.
Just Darren, thank you.
Extension report. I seen Emily hiding back there.
Hello, Emily.
Long
Good
time no see.
morning. Yeah, long time no see, Commissioner Zelinski.
Yeah. Yes,
Just what, 24 hours? Not even.
not even.
All right. Well, I just have a quick
Your
report
name
for
is?
you. Emily Wilmus, livestock educator with U of M Extension, Stearns, Benton, Morrison counties. I just have a quick report and update on what's been going on with egg and livestock stuff with Extension. And I apologize to Commissioners Zelinski and Winter. They just heard this yesterday, so bear with me. Maybe I'll say something new. But the beef programming for the 3 counties, and specifically in Morrison County, has been going really well. We had our second cow-calf workshop since I've been here, and that was in January in Piers. Really well attended, heard lots of great things, evaluations looked really good, had an outstanding lineup of speakers, so now we are just turning our sights towards planning another summer event, and of course that would be our 3rd beef field day. Our first one had about 80 people, our second one had over 90 people, so we'll see if we can break 100 this summer. That's kind of my goal, but we'll see. That gets to be a lot of people to manage. And then a lot of that programming has been on the cow-calf operations, and we are looking at expanding into doing some things for feeder cattle as well. In December, I teamed with Brenda Miller, the livestock educator in Todd County, and we did a cattle feeder workshop that was actually held in Bertram, so in Todd County, but it was really targeted for Todd, Stearns, and Morrison County, and we did have Morrison County producers there. So that's another thing we're looking at expanding just to reach more producers. But it's not all beef. There are, of course, dairy producers in Morrison County still, too. It's a top 5 dairy county in the state. So on that note, coming up this this Friday, actually, we are having a workshop in Piers, and I'll pass these flyers around if you're interested. So it's called Robots versus Parlors, Economics and Options. This is a workshop we did last year in Sauk Center, and based on the success and demand for it, we decided to offer it again, but move it into Morrison County, so those producers can have an opportunity to attend. So we're expecting about 50 or so. That includes producers and egg business people who work with those producers, and really the purpose of this workshop is to help those farmers who kind of find themselves at a crossroads of, we know we need to maybe grow a little bit, or a son or daughter wants to come back, so what can we do to keep the farm economically viable? And so it's either expand the herd and get a parlor, or add some robots to help with some of the labor management pieces there. So here we kind of go through everything related to facilities, economics. We have a producer panel that comes in, so farmers who have actually been through the different scenarios to talk through their own experiences and what they would do differently, etc. So we're really looking forward to this. We think this is an outstanding program, and we're really glad that we can bring it back again. And you can see there, our speakers are from the University of Minnesota, from Extension, and from UW-Madison as well. And then just moving right along with what's been going on this winter. Of course, it's a busy season with lots of meetings and workshops going on. We have been doing our private pesticide applicator training workshops. Dan is really the one who leads those, and I just assist him day of. I do some of the teaching for those as well. And of course, that is arranged with the Department of Agriculture. We teach the class, and then that's how producers and others can get recertified to apply restricted use pesticides on their farms. If they do it commercially, there's a different set of trainings they have to go through. We just do the private applicators, so doing it on their own farms. And then lastly, the only other kind of program update I have, and you may have recall in the past, I was really hoping to do some sort of women's programming in 2015, and we actually, got the pieces together and offered it in 2016. So last week we had our first ever Extension Women in Agriculture Conference. It was held in St. Cloud. We had 80 women attend, and they came actually from all over the state. So a lot from the central area, Todd, Stearns, Benton, Morrison, counties, also Meeker, McLeod. There were people from Arlington, people from Pine City. I mean, it was just awesome, and I worked with an outstanding team of regional and another local educator on this, and it's something we really believe in, and we think women are playing a huge role in the farm, and the Department of Ag Census shows that with the number of female principal operators or females involved with a male spouse or male sibling on the farm now. So we really believe in this, like I said. We think it's important, and everybody got a lot out of it. We really focused on issues on the farm that these women deal with. So they're typically the HR department. So we talked about taxes and how you file those forms for your employees, and we talked about farm transfer planning, and we talked about leadership skills on the farm and kind of how women can be effective communicators, because they obviously communicate different than men. So yeah, really positive feedback on that, and we look forward to offering this conference every year and hopefully doing some piggyback programming with something this summer with some networking and tours and stuff as well. So that is all that I have. If there's any questions or discussion on that.
Gentlemen, any comments or questions?
Where do you get all your energy?
I don't know. I just wake up and have it. It's great.
If I may, again, we're part of the Tri-County. Commissioner Jelinski and myself, we attended the Tri-County Extension yesterday. It's us, Morrison County, Benton County, and Stearns County. And again, after the meeting, we kind of discussed our educators, and you three are doing a wonderful job, Dan, Beth, and yourself. And obviously, I had a comment about you the other day, how good a job you're doing. So again, keep up the good work and the energy.
All right, well, thank you, and be sure to let me know if there's ever anything you think I can be doing for the producers of Morrison County as well. So
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Auditors report. Come on down.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Denise with Motor Vehicle, and I'm kind of here for an annual update. Deb had passed out a graph for you guys to kind of show you where our revenues have been standing and how things have been progressing in the last 6 years. As you can see, Motor Vehicle has increased their revenue since 2010. We've had a couple increases in filing fees, which have helped in that area, and along with driver's license has also had an increase. Unfortunately, DNR hasn't done quite as well. That's always based on the snow, for the snowmobilers, and we haven't had much of that these last few years, so I'm guessing that's probably where that difference is coming from there. And as you can see, that does fluctuate quite a bit too in those areas. The revenue for the last 6 years, from 2010 to 2015, has gone up $100,000 in our revenue for just Morrison County. And that's basically from motor vehicle applications. Some driver's license, we did have driver's license increase. Oh, where do I have that here? Driver's license increase we had back in 2011. And so that has also played a factor in our increase in revenues. Any questions on the revenue part or how
Mr.
things
Chair,
are
my
going?
question would be, you say you've had an increase, substantial increase in revenues.
Mhm.
That increase of revenues, does that go into reserve, or does it go to the state, or?
No, it's all county, what we've
So it stays
taken in.
So we have a
Mhm.
reserve then, it's building that reserve?
Right.
It actually goes into our revenue fund, so it just basically kind of goes into our fund balance.
Okay. The auditor's fund balance?
Nope, just the general revenue fund balance.
Oh,
It's kind of
into the county's
absorbed into the
general fund.
county.
The county's general fund?
Yep.
And Mr. Chair, keep in mind, it offsets expenses. When
Right.
you
Right.
have
No, I
additional
understand.
revenue, you typically have additional costs that go
Right.
with it, and expenses
Right.
for staffing, and to make sure that those transactions are covered. And so, whatever the difference is, and this has been a self-funded area of Morrison County for, well, a while. I don't know that we've ever had expenses that have exceeded our revenues with that function, because it's not a function we have to do, but it's certainly
No.
one that provides a great service to
To the
our
residents.
Exactly.
citizens, and all of us appreciate the fact that we can come here to this building to be able to do that. And as long as the revenues are covering those costs, it's a great thing to provide.
Right.
One more question while I have you here. The state is now requiring that we provide our insurance information when we come to the, they did that
Yes,
for
they
years
are.
and years and years, and what's it been, 2 or
We
3
dropped
years
it.
now we haven't
Right,
had to?
well, it's been longer than
Oh,
that.
has
I
it
bet
been?
you
Oh,
it's
yeah.
been 7 or 8
Oh,
years.
that long, okay.
Yeah, it's been a while. And unfortunately, they did bring that back, and that was due to lobbyists pushing for that. And they created a work group, and that work group was with insurance companies, law enforcement, Department of Public Safety, and they all conglomerated and tried to figure out a way to get insurance checked. Unfortunately, it was put back on our plate.
So that's, basically, there were issues with the state doing it?
Well, it was up to law enforcement, from what I understand, but there was not really a good checking system for, like, the people that didn't get pulled over.
I
Was
see.
my understanding of why they decided to implement it again. And
Just
they're
curious.
working on a program to hopefully have a check and balance type thing where, people can't come in one day and provide insurance and the next day drop it. So, at this point, they don't have an actual program in place yet, but hopefully in the near future they will.
Some type of database, yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And that'll just bring me into, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but on this motor vehicle with the, if I bring in John Doe Insurance, who's gonna check on it? That's the key.
Nobody right
It's-
now, but in the
See,
future,
right.
that's the
And so
goal.
they're gonna create more,
Right, and right now you're kind of giving the state your information based
Right.
off of,
Yeah.
what you
Being
tell them,
truthful.
but there's no one there that's
Right.
policing it.
right.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at possibly, maybe putting charges if people aren't supplying the correct information or the appropriate information. And until they get something in place for that, yeah.
So they're,
Right now it's kind of
they have to be thinking of creating another giant database in
Sure.
the sky
Correct.
that's gonna trigger that I come in with insurance, get my tabs, call my insurance company, cancel my insurance company. That all goes into this big database.
Right.
Eventually rings a bell to you or to law enforcement, says, whoop, I don't have insurance any longer.
And guess what, Commissioner Jins, they're probably gonna have to hire more people.
Without a
so
doubt.
Your revenue
Yeah.
goes down.
Absolutely.
And, so create.
Blows my mind.
More
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
Right, and we've noticed even just with customers coming in and the entry that we're having to take the time to do has added to our
And I'm
Sure.
assuming their
Oh,
point
sure,
is because
yeah.
it's a law required to have insurance in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you there's a lot of people you send that have to go get the right.
It's out in the car.
Absolutely, because it's still so new.
Yes. Because you don't ask for a copy of it, you just, they
We
can.
just need name,
0001
policy number, and
and-
expiration
yeah.
date.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. At this point.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. That actually brings me into a new system that the state is working on right now, which is called the MNLARS program. The MNLARS program is replacing an outdated legacy system that they've had for umpteen years and have not been able to do updates on. And so the state right now has already started the system. Back in 2009, if you remember, there was a technology surcharge that was added to every renewal to help pay for this new system. Well, since 2009, they had HP running the program. HP has been fired from the program, and now the state is doing their own programming. So things had kind of got put in the back burner with the state as far as title transfers, things like that, because they were putting their resources towards this new program. This new program is finally up. It's not totally functional and running. By 2018, they should have the system up and running, which might bring in the insurance part of it. That's kind of what they're anticipating. So
They should have,
hopefully,
which might.
yes, yes. This fall, though, they are adding the title and registration area. So we have new duties that will be coming on with this new program in making hopefully our job a little bit easier as far as the reporting end of it. So we're really looking forward to that. Things may be adjusting as far as where staffing will be. Jill, that does the reporting right now, possibly might be more out front as a lead worker versus, she'll still be doing the report. It'll just not be as much entry into that area. So things will probably be changing a little bit on that end, but I don't see a big thing happening there. They are doing a demo just to kind of show us the program here in mid-March, so we're kind of excited to see what they have coming for us. So, DVS also had a new DVS director appointed last week. Pat McCormick, I don't know if any of you guys knew, Department of Public Safety director, but she has retired. And Don Olson, which was the MNLARS, the new computer system that I was telling you about, was their program director, is now our new DVS director. So lots of changes going on with the state too. So hopefully everything falls into place still with our new computer system, and we'll be up and working in fall like they're anticipating. So those are just some changes coming up, along with legislation. Real ID is a big thing right now. They're still working on that. Federal requirements are is what anticipates or what is getting that program going. Right now, deputies are not included in that area, which we're watching for legislation to make sure that we are not going to get put to the wayside on that, because of course we do driver's license right now. They're looking at possibly us needing to have background checks, which of course with the county we already get, but just a few extra security enticements that they're adding to that program.
Mr. Chair, Denise, would that put driver's license in the same boat as like passports in terms of the
Federal requirements?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in fact, it probably will be basically the same or more.
And so there may be some components of intermixing the different lines of business you do in the motor vehicle area,
Well-
similar to that of maybe the passport and vital records stuff.
We still have to be kept separately.
Yeah.
You know, due to statute.
Well, but that's what I mean,
Right.
and then that's what struggles we have sometimes with how we're physically offering some of these services when they change where the regulations are coming from. And so
Right.
that may be a component that we need to keep in mind to make sure that,
Mhm.
that motor vehicle has the resources to be able to physically manage if there are changes from the
Mhm.
federal government regarding how they do business.
Right,
So just,
because it will add to our job, you know,
Exactly.
when that all happens,
Yeah.
or if it does happen. So, obviously, 2018 is what their goal in having everything implemented for Minnesota along with all the other states for Real ID. So, we've got a couple years. We're hoping they're not gonna wait till the last minute and get on board right away. So, we'll see what happens with that. Data privacy, of course, is a big thing right now too. We're having to really watch what we do and provide to customers over the phone. It's hard because we've not really had to watch that quite as closely, but now we are instructed to pretty much not give any private or public information over the phone. We can't look up transactions on the computer. like we could before when we were looking up things due to data privacy. There's still a working group out there that's trying to provide us deputies and dealers with information on what we can do and what we can't do. So we're in the mix of that right now, hoping to get a little bit more guidance from the state and have more of an idea of what we can help over the phone. When they come in, obviously they're bringing in their driver's license, so we're able to view and know that that's the person standing in front of us, and that's the biggest issue right now that we're running into on that. We're also working with IFS right now on a cash drawer system.
IFS.
Our financial system.
Financial system. And getting a cash drawer system in. As you know, we still have our cash registers that we're using, and we're wanting to hopefully implement this with the new state program and having a cash drawer system in place by the time that gets up and rolling.
Mr. Chair, Denise, I have to ask, what's the difference? Cash drawer? Are we
It's-
talking about a drawer? I don't understand.
It's a drawer. It's instead of it being an actual register that you have sitting at the counter,
Yeah.
we have a computer program right into the system. So we're hoping for it to work a little bit with the state's new system coming along, that we won't have to enter things a couple different times, or even with balancing, that it might make our job a little bit easier in
Gotcha.
balancing.
It will integrate better.
Right now with cash registers, we have these nice long
Yep.
tapes that we get to go
Yep.
through.
Yep.
Not fun.
Just
It might make it easier.
It's
Might.
physically entering or balancing or checking what you just put in a drawer and how you provide those transactions versus a system that you can computerize it and it spits out what you should have for the DNR revenue for the day, what you should have for this, and then you have that all entered instead of counting the cash, figuring out where you push the button for it, and then
Very good.
Right.
and entering it
So
again.
hopefully
That at least makes sense
get
to
it
me.
hashed together. And, you know, the IFS system is already a county-based system, so it shouldn't cost us a whole lot of extra dollars
We
to
already
get that
own
up
it,
and
yeah.
running, because we already own it. Just downloads is, I think, the biggest thing right now,
Yep.
so. That is kind of my synopsis for
If I may,
what's
credit
going on.
cards, do you guys take Visa, MasterCard, and American Express, or just those two?
Discover,
And
Visa,
Discover.
MasterCard, and Discover only, not American Express.
Okay. Any other questions, gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Auditor's report.
Okay, we have a request for a bingo application with Bethany Lutheran
I
Church.
got a motion
I'll
from
make a
Mr.
motion.
Commissioner
Second.
Wilson, a second. Any more discussion, gentlemen? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. We have board warrants.
Motion to pay the bills.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Second, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Mauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson, myself, aye. Motion carried.
And I would like to sneak in a last minute request. I had a resignation in my office yesterday from my deputy auditor treasurer. She gave me 2 weeks' notice, and it's a position I need to fill right away.
What's
Jim?
right away mean?
Yeah.
As soon as physically possible.
Myself personally, I would probably like to have Deb and you, Deb, discuss, make sure this is
Yep,
something.
we talked
We
about it
did
yesterday.
yesterday a little bit,
Right.
and Deb and I spoke about what to do and where we're at. At this time, the auditor treasurer's, Deb's kind of rethinking, approving, or filling that part-time position that we've talked about before. And I think we've both talked about the fact that it's important and it would be ideal to try to get folks together, to be able to have coverage better, to be able to have cross-training better, to be able to have those offices meld like was intended on paper back when I vacated the position in 2008. So what we're going to try to do is work with what we have, not spending a lot of dollars if we can help it, to try to get folks together, bringing somebody in to replace this position, because it's fairly key in terms of operation of that department. I mean, I worked there too. I was there for a few years in that office, and it's important to have somebody who can do that work, because there is daily work that is done with that job. But I also, in addition to that, really feel it's important to try to do what we can, and it's not ideal, and we're working with our facility, and we're trying to look at office space, and that's changed over the years, and all of that is occurring at the same time, but really try to work towards getting that group of folks in an office together to help some of those functions, to help with efficiencies that I think are there, that can be created, to help with customer service that I think can be improved upon if we have folks working together. And so we've got some ideas. We've been doing some brainstorming as to whether or not we can kind of use one of those counters a bit more on a regular basis and another one for elections, but maybe they need to be flopped a little bit given the space that there is for people in the one area versus the other, until we have a little bit longer term vision about what we need to do with the maybe facility a bit broader in terms of where.
Gentlemen, I'd like to have a motion and a second for more discussion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, and my question is, you talked a lot about facility, Devin, about people working together and everything else. Are you recommending that we fill this position?
I'm recommending that we fill the position, but in conjunction with that, I would like to see that office on a regular basis. So again, there's certain components like elections that are going to move people a little bit for shorter periods of time, but on a regular basis, have those folks together so they can cover for each other, so they can learn what's happening. Again, left hand and right hand, when you know what's happening, really can work a lot better together. So I'm hoping that we can make that work, and I think Deb and I are
Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Mr. Chair, any time, I mean, we've discussed this, as far as I'm concerned, a billion times over and over and over amongst all of our departments within the government. Anytime that we have the opportunity to make it easier for the public without costing virtually anything, to make it easier on staff, to make it easier on each of our agencies, we have to go in that direction, I think. And of course, what we're asking here is not to add an employee, it's to replace one that obviously the auditor just told me we need. Deb, you're saying we need, but we need to do more with change each
Right.
time there is change.
Yes.
And I'm in favor of
Yeah,
that.
we both agree.
If I may, you brought up part-time. You're not requesting a part-time.
No, we originally had a
Right,
part-time
yeah,
position
right.
in our office, and we're saying at this point, we want to hold off on that. We want to bring the people together first and see what we can do with efficiencies in, just with what we have right now.
which
And-
means replacing this most recent
Yep.
recipe.
And with the motion and the second, I would like to see you, Deb, work together to come up with and put it in your
Plan
hands.
for the future.
Yeah, we're kind of working on some different thoughts on how physically that can be located and what that means when there's elections. And working with that space right now, that's just defined as the auditor and treasurer's office, but figuring out how we can have a counter that can maybe serve for the vast majority, and then, like right now, we have the elections closed in one, when the elections are there, we open that counter, but maybe we need to flop that because there's more room to fit everybody in the other side, we can fit
Yeah.
everyone, but have kind of an election center built on the other side, and tax collection's a busy time, and elections are a busy time. Tax collection isn't like what it used to be. It's not a line down the hallway for weeks on end. There's a few days that really are busy, but more people are doing it online, more people are doing it through escrow, more people are doing it different ways and not necessarily standing there. So I think we have some opportunity. I think Deb and I both have the same picture in terms of what we want to see. Not an ideal space for it if we
Yeah.
could start from scratch, don't get me wrong, but we're
Exactly.
gonna work with what we have for now, knowing that we've got other maintenance and different things that we have to address as far as a building as a whole, but
Right.
we're not ready for that yet. So we need to work with what we have and filling this position, but holding off on the part-time to see if we can't make it work, I think is a good plan.
So, Mr. Chair, with the motion, if I understand it correctly, it's to get it in the paper, get it publicized, get applications to come in, but with that, to have Deb and staff make this thing work
Yes.
better and better and better all the time.
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, we've talked about that with other departments, this and that, and I do think that we need to have some plans in place so that when somebody does resign or we're replacing people, that we've taken a good look at how we want to be in the future.
Yeah.
And how we fill those positions, because when you have 2 weeks' notice, we should have a plan
Right.
of how people would do and work around things and get the support of the people in those departments and working with them. And so it's not just that we're throwing something in new and everybody's upset.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
and
so-
Mr. Chair, this is something that's been talked about since, again, the auditor treasurer was combined 7, 8 years ago. And the steps to truly combine and integrate haven't necessarily occurred. So I think there's some opportunity that we
Yes.
can, and we've been thinking about that, and we've been talking about that. And I think the physical nature of where and how they're located and that not changing has impeded that. But I think we can work with what we have for a while and see if we can't take some of that physical barrier and remove that so that the
Those
non-physical
walls,
walls
yes.
can come down a little bit also. But you're right, I think just setting a outline, it's not specifics of people and where they're
Yeah.
at, but a general outline about what we want as an organization. What type of service-oriented organization do we want to be? Do we want to look at really concentrating on the customer and where they're and where they're going in the organization and what business they're doing and how that interacts, I think is important, and I think we ought to, and more work to follow on that.
Because even this job description could be a little different
Oh, yep.
than what it is before
Yep.
by what we expect somebody to do in the future.
Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely.
And that, Deb has already been looking at that to make sure we get the person and the skill set that we need for now and not what necessarily was before.
Right.
Because I think you're right, exactly.
It's always changing.
And
Yes.
part of the discussion, to make it more efficient, but yet make it more acceptable for the public, and, that's what we're looking at.
Mr. Chair, and to train them in based on what the county needs in that position as opposed to what the individual. And people get
Right.
entrenched and are here for years and
Good.
years and years, which can create they have a perception of what their job is, and that can create some
Yeah.
issues. So it's kind of nice to bring someone new in to be able
See
to.
the outside in it.
Yeah.
Any more discussion, gentlemen? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
Thank you, Deb, good luck.
Good day, Deb.
That's it. Public Works, please. Steve?
Morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning, ladies. Morning. Mr. Attorney.
I think we've got everybody covered.
Who did you forget?
Everybody here. A number of items for your consideration today.
What's this, Steve?
We like to try to cover it all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, but I do have a couple of things that also weren't in your packet.
Got a lot of papers there.
Oh, yes, you need to be well informed.
You guys need like half an hour to study it before we go on?
You've been through this enough times.
No more excuses.
It sounds to me like Steve has great faith in them, and I like that.
The first large 11 by 17 sheet gives the history of our grant dispersals for the townships and cities since 1991. So it's been a long time since we have dispersed grants for recycling. We used to do it for solid waste, but it goes back to 1991 when the county became involved, took over the landfill, went through the permitting process to operate the facility. And as a part of that, we had a number of requirements in that permit that we needed to develop programs and implement programs that helped reduce the amount of waste going into the facility. The way we implemented that back then were through grants to the cities and townships and working with them to develop their own programs that they felt fit them the best. And so this demonstrates how we've done that. We've dispersed a lot of money over the years in order to accomplish that. So that just gives you that history. The next sheet is what we are proposing for our 2016 city and township grant amounts. We provide 2 grants to these different cities and townships, depending on which programs they have elected or have determined that they want to participate in. On the recycling side, the townships that are closest to the landfill utilize the recycling program and what we offer at the landfill, so that has not been made available to some of the some of the townships that are close by that facility, just because they have access to that one, which is year-round and probably offers the greatest variety of recycling opportunities. We increased the budget for 2016 because we have not been providing additional revenues to the townships and cities as they implemented these programs, and that was kind of driven, well, it was driven with the economic downturn and budget constraints. We believe, though, that revenues that we will be seeing this year, we can accommodate a little bit more revenues that we can pass on to the townships. We fund this through our state SCORE grant that we receive, and also the surcharge that is collected from the disposal of waste at the landfill. There's also property tax dollars that go towards these recycling and cleanup day grants. And so my request is, we have resolutions that are included in your packet. One for authorizing us to implement the recycling grants that you see here to the townships and cities, and authorizing the chairman to enter into those grants once we have them in place with the townships.
Gentlemen, I would like a motion.
So moved.
And a second for more discussion. Any discussion, gentlemen?
Good stuff, and we need to do this. Anything that we can not put in the ground out there saves us in the long run. As I will state again, as I have in the past, I still believe that we really need to do more, if we can at some point, to address recycling by businesses in the cities, and that has concerned me. A lot of stuff is going into the landfill from businesses as opposed to residential people who own their own homes, where we recycle a lot of this stuff, and that's something we've talked about before, Steve, and it still is a concern of mine.
If I may, now, Employment Enterprises, Morrison County DAC is the same, right? Or no, which one was it? We added someone?
That used to be, that was the old term, the DAC,
Right.
for their Employment Enterprises.
And that was
Corporate.
added this year, correct?
We will address that after these
Oh,
two
okay.
resolutions. These two resolutions are the ongoing grant programs that we've implemented with the townships and cities. One is the recycling, one is the cleanup day.
Okay.
So we'll implement a request that you approve those two resolutions, and then we would act on the EEI grant separately after that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Steve, this is kind of the same amount of money as last year.
No, it's about a
It's an
50% increase. We budgeted that type of increase overall.
I was looking at 16 and 16 on this sheet and this sheet. Okay. Good, thanks.
So was that motion for both of the resolutions?
Yes, do you want to?
I thought it was.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right.
Then, this kind of goes to what Commissioner Mauer talked about. I think you may not have been able to attend the planning meeting where we discussed a grant request by EEI. EEI provides recycling opportunities for businesses within Little Falls and Morrison County. Most of those are, small type businesses, recycling glass, cardboard, some of those. They provide that opportunity. They do collection. They had come to us because they were going to be making a grant application to the Initiative Foundation, as they have run into the low commodity prices are affecting them, and that what they're doing and what they're producing over there has really lost a lot in value. The disabled employees that they also provide employment for have additional requirements in terms of wages and costs to them. And Brad also was available at that planning meeting to discuss that their focus is more on that part of it, and there really hasn't been a lot of funding that has been able to be focused in on efficiencies and better equipment and safety for that operation. And so we have met with them. We've seen some things that they're proposing that we believe would be very beneficial in the way that they are able to conduct their business. And what we would be requesting is a one-time grant to EEI that would support them putting in place efficiencies and improvements to equipment so that they can continue to offer these recycling services to businesses in our county. And we will develop that grant with them, and then we ask the board that you'd authorize the chairman to sign that once it's in place.
Do you want to take a vote on that right now for that? Okay, I'm assuming this would be a roll call vote.
Do we have a motion for that?
Oh, yeah, we have, okay, I need a motion, please.
So moved.
And a second for
Second.
more discussion. I have a motion and a second.
So my question is, I know EEI has their own garbage truck and they do a lot of their own pickup. And so when they pick something up, the cardboard or whatever, they do their own funneling that out? That doesn't go to our landfill? They contract with different
Right.
people who
And
utilize that stuff?
Yes.
Okay,
They'll use
okay.
the pythons to, to sell their product to, or they contract whoever they can get the best price from.
Okay,
They-
great.
They also do contract with some of the local haulers that have recycling contracts to process
Okay,
materials there
okay,
also.
Okay, great. Good.
It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
And
Good,
Mr.
good.
Chair, it's kind of twofold in terms of supporting an organization that really, does important work with the recycling and as you just addressed before about making sure we have, opportunities for people to recycle and to do environmentally friendly activities, but then also employing disabled adults who we also have a responsibility for as an organization. It's something that investing in a place like this is really providing value in a number of different ways.
And if I may,
Good
where does
statement, thank you.
where does this money come from, this?
This money will come from budgeted funds out of the solid waste budget.
Again, I think it goes to a great cause.
Fantastic.
So-
Good.
So anyway, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Jalinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The next item on the agenda is a request that we would approve a resolution authorizing us to submit a grant application for funding for the Siouxland Trail.
I'd like to have a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
More discussion.
In 2015, the board was aware that we worked with Minnesota Power on the improvement of one of the piers on the Mississippi River Bridge over the Mississippi River Bridge with the Sioux Line to conduct repairs for deterioration of the pier footing, which Minnesota Power did out in the river, and then we conducted our work, which was an improvement to the pier cap that supports the bridge itself. We have in two different time periods made applications for grants to conduct that work. We've not been successful up until this point in time. We've been working a two-pronged deal where we've asked Representative Kresha and Senator Gazelka both to work to get the work that we need to do on each of those piers in the bonding bill for this year. The bonding bill typically has a match. It may be 50%, it may be 75%, it may be nothing. It has to be a part of the legislation, but normally there is a match to bonding. This grant also has a match. This is a federal program that we're applying for here, but the nice thing is it comes through, and it's how we funded the ramps on the trail at Highway 10, is that the bonding matched the grant. And our local contribution was minimized under that scenario. That's what we're trying to accomplish with this. We broke it into two different projects. This project would be the repair of the other three pier caps And then also the repair of the column stems themselves, which is our responsibility. I don't believe that Minnesota Power is proposing additional work on the footings of the piers that are left in 2015 or 16. And so it may be that they'll have to come back and do those as a part of a separate project on their own. But what we're requesting here is that you authorize us to try and secure this funding to do this work.
Gentlemen, any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, I know, Steve, when we were out there, they need repair. And I support this here very much so because there's a lot of concrete coming off of those pads up on top.
And Mr. Chair, if we don't try to get a grant, we're never going to get a grant. We have to apply for the grant. It's funding.
And the reason we broke it into two pieces was the fact some of the grants don't get to be as much as we would need. The piers certainly are more of an issue than the abutments at this point in time. Once we have the repair of the piers completed, we'll move on to do repairs of the abutments. But it's my opinion that the abutments can wait.
And also, gentlemen, my opinion is that if we don't get it repaired, eventually we're gonna have to close that, and that's kind of a nice tourist trail attraction, and it would be sad to see it closed.
Well, that's a big connection to the other side of the river.
Yeah, it's huge.
All right, gentlemen, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I also am requesting authorization for the advancement of Park County Road 213 project with MnDOT. That road it runs from our County State Aid Highway 13, paralleling the river, and intersects with 115 at Camp Ripley's gates. We have it in the Surface Transportation Improvement Plan, the State Transportation Improvement Plan, in which we will be receiving a match of federal dollars. We have a lot of work going on out in that area. I believe that by advancing this to this year, when we have work in that area, we're going to see some very competitive bids. That's why I'm requesting the board to authorize us to do this. We will upfront the payment to the contractor once the work is complete, but in October, we'll be eligible to receive the federal funding, so it is going to be a relatively short period of time that I don't see would be affecting our balance to any great extent.
I would need a motion and a second.
So moved.
A motion and a second.
So
Any
the
more discussion,
motion
gentlemen?
would be to authorize the resolution to enter into the agreement and then, and have the chairman and administrator sign it.
And just some clarification, Commissioner, Mr. Chair. 215 is the road from the 213 that crosses Little Elk and goes right to the camp gates?
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Mr. Chair, Steve, I have to just ask, that's not gonna be supplanting, is it? We paying earlier and then getting money later when we know it? I mean, or is it?
I
believe
don't
so,
know.
no.
All we're doing is moving the project ahead about 6 months.
Okay.
And we'll initially fund the construction work with our own money. That's how we do it anyway.
Okay.
There's many grant programs that require you to outlay the money before you get it.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, supplanting is a different, where you're getting loan funds and you're investing it at a higher rate, and that's.
Very good, good enough, thank you.
Any more discussion, gentlemen? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next action is a resolution and agreement that would allow MnDOT to compensate us for detour routes for the replacement of two structures that they are going to replace this summer at Rice Creek and Skunk River on State Highway 10 between Little Falls and Piers, or one is between here and Piers. The other one would be between Lastrip and Charlie's Corner, I guess you'd
Gentlemen, I
call
would
it.
need a motion and a second for authorizing the signing agreement between DOT and
Second.
Morrison County. I got a motion and a second. More discussion.
Well, my question is, so you said it's the bridge over the Skunk River?
It's two of them.
So two of them, which ones would be?
One is just west of Little Falls here over Rice Creek.
Okay.
Okay, would be replacing that. I think that's a box culvert installation. The other one is the Skunk River. It would be
About 5 miles?
yeah, about 5 miles east of Lastrip is where the Skunk crosses State Highway 27.
Yep.
And they will be utilizing our County State Aid Highway 43 and 45. So they pick them up off 27 to 40, our County State Aid 45, take them to 43, and then bring them into the intersection at Evergreen. That would be that one. The other one is at Lastrip, Trunk Highway 23 to R47, 47 to State Highway 27.
Great.
And the way the way the policies have been established is that we, because of the traffic that is routed onto our county state aid highways, we receive the gas tax and revenues that those vehicles would generate for the time period that they're using our roadways. That's how they determine the amount that's in the agreement.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any more discussion, gentlemen? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next action item is a cross-jurisdictional agreement that Crow Wing County has requested. We share several roads with Crow Wing County. Our County Road 275 is 3 miles in length, 2 miles are gravel, 1 mile is bituminous. Our arrangement in the past has been that Crow Wing County does the maintenance on the 2 miles of gravel. We do the maintenance on the 1 mile of bituminous. County State Aid Highway 51 that comes out of Harding, there is about 1 mile, I guess it's 8/10, that runs on the border with Crow Wing County. We do the maintenance on that, the entire stretch of 51, but 8/10 is on our county line. This agreement essentially just lays out the terms and conditions that we've been following for many years.
I'll move on that, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any more discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second for the jurisdictional maintenance between Crow Wing and Morrison County. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, are we going to charge him based upon per action item here?
I'm kind of wondering the same thing, wow.
I don't know who did this, but the guys were pretty active. I think they're trying to drive me crazy.
Get ready for spring.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this resolution, and actually I have the signed agreements from Belle Prairie Township, is for the removal of bridge number L9437. That is the next bridge downstream from the one that we replaced this summer on the Flat River. The structure is getting into very poor condition. Again, timbers that are becoming deteriorated to the point that the bridge is severely restricted basically to cars and pickups. And so we have met with the Township of Belle Prairie. They are wanting to remove the structure. When you remove a structure off the system and replace it with a township road, so you don't have another bridge that goes back in, they can use town bridge money at 100% to do that. And so what the agreement is, it's an engineering agreement or a standard agreement that we would design the alignment for them right of way and then let a contract to remove the bridge. And so our request is that you would authorize the resolution for the chairman and the administrator to enter into the agreement with Belle Prairie Township to provide those services.
Need a motion and a second. Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second. Any more discussion, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, that's the old Gravel bill, right, Steve?
Yeah, yes.
We're on that one.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wilson?
And you're removing it and not replacing it?
Yes.
So then the people will come up that other road?
They'll have to come out right where our new bridge is, that gravel road. If they're coming to the north, they'll come out right by our new structure.
So, Mr. Chair, and maybe we can ask Belle Prairie to chime in on it a little bit, is what happens? I understand you take the bridge out and there's no bridge. Is there a big berm that is created on both sides? Because the road's still there.
Well, we will obliterate the approaches to the old bridge. And so there will be a new alignment of the gravel road. And the approaches to the old bridge will be obliterated. We'll restore the river slope, that kind of thing. There is some right-of-way acquisition that we'll work with the township on and the property owner to get the project put together, but it will be substantially less than what a bridge would cost.
Sure.
And the second part of that is that to get MnDOT to approve funding for this structure now that we just have put this new one in upstream would be very difficult to accomplish.
And, Mr. Chair, I think you then just align the road that comes by the Corey Road, okay, and basically make that into a ditch, I suppose.
Yeah, yes.
That would be gone.
Any more discussion, gentlemen? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the final action item, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, are the 2016 town road allotments. Every year, we certify to the state of Minnesota the mileage that our townships certify to us. They have to, each township has to levy a certain amount in order to qualify for town road monies. If they, and all of ours do, so they levy enough into their local town road to qualify for this. Then the qualification after that is 50% of their allotment is based on the overall miles that we have in our county, and 50% is based on the population that each township has compared to the overall population in the townships. And so these are the allotments for 2016 that we would distribute, and we're requesting that the board authorize us to make those distributions.
Motion, I got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. And it's time to move on, and so the reason I have 30 days notice, but even with 30 days notice, to be able to update our job description and get the advertisement in and evaluate the job descriptions, evaluate the applications, and then they take time if they're leaving another position. All those things take a lot of time. I am requesting you to allow me to move forward with filling this instead of coming through the planning meeting and going through that process.
I would need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion, gentlemen?
Well, and I think she's a very integral part in your processing over there.
Oh, very much so.
You just can't be without her, so the
It
sooner
has
we can,
been.
the sooner we can replace that position, you can never replace it, but, fill the position and train them, the better, so.
Any more discussion to fill the position?
Mr. Chair, it's that important. Let's get it done.
I think one of the things, when we went to time card, when we automated our time, that was, we cut a position. We did at that point in time, so where we did have some redundancy, it was easier to maybe have some delays. We've eliminated that from the system, and so it's difficult not to try to replace this as quickly as we can. Otherwise, that burden's put on.
And like you said, 30 days sometimes isn't enough either, so.
Mr. Chair, I know there's some administrators here, but, 2 weeks' notice, which people need to give us, is there anything like a reward program that we could give people that gave us 6 months' notice, for instance? In some areas to where, there's areas where it does take people more than two weeks to fill, and that's all they're obligated to, so.
That's a good question. I don't know that I can think of, another example of that. That doesn't mean we couldn't come up with something and get a little creative with how we do that. But you gotta keep in mind, it's also our responsibility as departments, as staff, to ensure we have redundancy and we're able to operate with absences that can occur. Anybody can get ill, and they have a right to take 3 months off. If there's things that we have in our system that we need to ensure as managers that we can, operate. It's not easy. It's not fun. It's not always the best, and there are gives that have to come with that in terms of the ability to get things done as quickly as we'd like, or the ability to serve people as quickly as we'd like. And we don't want to operate with that shortage any more than we have to. But we do need to have some redundancy built in. So that is incumbent upon, that's what I require of staff, to ensure that we have something with that. So yes, maybe, we can look at some different types of opportunities. Higher level management positions, we have in our personnel policy that we provide 30 days, and that's pretty consistent. 2 weeks is pretty typical for most jobs as a requirement. I think more often than not, we maybe get some ideas, especially when it's a retirement, especially when it's something that somebody has been planning for. We get a little bit more notice, which is great, but to hold staff accountable to that is a tough one too. But good, it's a good
Steve
thought.
might be able to work the counter for a while, you never know.
Well, he does. We all do.
Nothing wrong with that. But one of the things I think that in this situation was that they wanted to know that everything was in place before they give you the written notice, that PERA, their Social Security, all that stuff, and so to get too far out ahead is pretty hard for them to do.
And also, maybe to answer that, if we have somebody that's going to a different position, they want you to start March or this, so it's hard to say, okay, give me 6 months' notice, it's, real world doesn't work.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think on occasion we've approved for more overlap of training, but ultimately the costs increase significantly if you're bringing someone in that much earlier and training them, so you're paying 2 positions. So that creates in and of itself some dilemmas too.
I guess that really wasn't my question. My question really is, the more notice we have, the better we can do a job of. And some people know that they're gonna quit in a certain time and they don't say nothing, so.
And it's their right.
Yeah, that is their
And
right.
some people have the tendency to say, you don't give me a notice when you're putting me down the road, so, that's right.
I'll take back my question.
And I think that there's some discussion we can have and some thought process about how we go about filling positions. I mean, we had, in our personnel policy, we identify that there's an automatic replacement if it's a replacement of a position that we can replace without board authorization. But we changed that back in 08 and 09 when we really needed to look at positions, and we have had the opportunity to reduce quite a few through this process, but that opportunity is getting a little less and less. And so I think the ability to speed that along when it's a position that at least myself and the department head know is something that has been looked at already. Like Steve said, they've already reduced a position in their office, and they've already done that. That if we can maybe move that process along and get maybe a little bit more creative on being able to do that administratively versus go through steps of meetings and waiting for those times and things like that can be tough sometimes. It can delay it 2, 3, almost 4 weeks, depending upon the timing of when we get a resignation. So if you're open to that, I'd like to talk more about some opportunities that we have with that, because like I said, it's not only Morrison County, it's everywhere that folks are starting to move, and there's gonna be more and more positions that are open that we need to fill, and we need to keep on that process because it does take a while.
And gentlemen, we have a motion, a second, to replace this position. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, one last thing for Steve. Are they opening bids next Thursday for the highway?
March 3rd, yes.
March 30th?
March 3rd.
March 3rd, okay.
Next
That's just
Next week then, right?
Yes. All right, thank you,
Thank you,
Steve.
Steve. Thank you.
And we're moving on right along. Administrators report.
And to continue on with the theme of replacing positions and throwing my papers everywhere, we'll ignore that. We have, in Glenn's here today, to talk about the vacancy we have upcoming in the senior accredited ag appraiser position. Glenn and I were able to talk. I was out last week when he came and talked to you guys regarding the vacancy. And through some discussion, we talked about what the options are. Just ignore all those papers. But what else? Now you're
Steve's not gone yet. He's taken care of.
Yeah, he's being a
just paying me
gentleman.
back for reminding him he had one more item.
What a gentleman. What a
Way to
gentleman.
go, Steve.
Have a good day, Steve. Thank you.
Anyway, I lost my train of thought on that one.
You were
We
talking
talked about the
replacing
senior,
position.
the replacement position and what to do with that. My recommendation would be, and Glenn and I discussed that we do advertise to fill the senior accredited ag position and to structure the office so we have the senior positions and the senior accredited positions. It's kind of twofold. The senior accredited is a license that folks get, and the senior positions, while titled the same in our office, are positions that are kind of technical experts in that field of appraising. And they've kind of coincided with those being senior accredited positions. My recommendation is we move towards an office that has a senior ag position, a senior residential, and a senior commercial position. That would then be senior accredited in terms of they have that little bit higher level of education that's there. And outside of those three technically more defined positions, we have an appraiser level that is less than that. You don't need as much certification or as much schooling to be able to complete that general appraisal position. And I think previously we've had more than 3 senior accredited folks, whether they have that expert niche or they don't have that expert niche. But what I'd like to see and what we'd like to move towards is that we only have those 3.
And
Gentlemen, I would like a
Chair?
motion and a second.
Make a
So
motion.
moved.
Second.
And now we need more discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, so what you're saying is that we're losing the 1 senior accredited. So this would just be replacing that, so we'd have 3, 1 in each area.
Well, and to further complicate that is we have an upcoming retirement that's going to be
Right.
happening in the next
Understood.
number of months. And so with that request, and that person's also at the senior accredited level, but they don't have that unique specialty that
Okay,
is
so they're
tied
not
to
one
it.
of those 3 that you're saying.
Not one of those
maybe-
3 that I'm saying, but does currently have that title and pay that goes with it. My thought would be that we have those 3 be senior accredited positions:
Could you name them 3 again?
ag, residential, commercial. And then as we replace those other positions that may vacate, we don't have them with the expectation that they'll move to that senior, higher level, higher paid. Because we really can perform that function with less accreditation. It's nice to have those experts. It's nice to have the ability to promote folks into that and have that niche covered, because we do. Glenn's done an excellent job making sure we have staff trained with very technical expertise, and that's awesome. That's great. We need to have that. But we got to make sure we're coupling that with only paying for as many as we need versus having all staff perhaps or the majority of staff be at that higher level. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
So, Mr. Chair, if I'm understanding it correctly, in theory, when it's all done, shook out, we would end up with a senior accredited, ag, residential, and commercial. And then we would have others that are just senior
Just
appraisers, or just appraisers, or?
Up to accreditation. After we go to the 3 seniors, senior residential, senior ag,
Yeah,
senior
we
commercial.
would have those
okay,
3.
They're done. Okay, then on the next page, now we're talking about licensing level. You can start as a trainee, become certified, and then accredited, and then senior accredited. By
We
state.
would only have
We would
3
only-
senior accredited. Right now,
Filling the
today, do we
senior
have more
positions.
than 3 senior accredited?
On
Okay.
the license level.
But the end result eventually, when that day would come through attrition, thank you very much. Through attrition, we would just simply have the 3 senior accredited, and the other ones would have titles below that.
And Mr. Chair, I think those other people can go on and get whatever accreditation or certification
They
they
want,
want.
but we're not paying for it.
That's
Is
right,
that-
and we're
is
not
that-
paying them more because they have that if they want to then position themselves to move into one of those other roles, which is very typical in a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
systems.
I understand.
And whether or not we invest in that in terms of training dollars and things of that nature, we can talk about that. But in terms of moving into that position, there needs to be a vacancy that occurs in the 3 senior level positions in order to be able to bump to that pay grade. Is what I'm thinking. I know there's reasonable people that can disagree with that. So my thought is to structure in a way to set that up so we do have that value add of having those technical experts in those areas. We do have the ability to have folks that are working in the position work towards that when there is a vacancy, work towards that licensure. And even if, I'm not opposed to the fact of looking to investing in staff to get that training and to set, and to put in place the opportunities for them. I'm not opposed to it. I think we need to continue to train employees. I think we need to continue to invest in them because that's a way to retain them. But to move to that pay level, to move to that higher level position, a vacancy needs to occur, and we have that ability then to shift them to that niche area.
So am I on the right page then? Right now, we have people that are senior accredited in the assessor's office.
5 senior accredited, 1 accredited.
Okay, and we're losing 1 senior accredited agriculture appraiser.
Correct.
And we could have, not that we do, we could have staff currently on board that could apply for that job and get it, but they would have to get,
They would have to already possess and/or shortly possess. the
shortly
senior-
possess that agricultural piece.
Yep, that's senior accreditation.
Senior accreditation.
Accredited,
level.
okay.
Yeah.
Or, nobody applies and we have to go outside, and at that time, we would be, the ad would say we're looking for a senior accredited agricultural appraiser. Am I on the right page?
Correct.
Yep, and actually given there's another vacancy upcoming within the next number of months, I would like to propose that we advertise for 2 positions to be able to allow us to fill that senior accredited position, but then also up to an accredited position. So kind of open it up a bit more broadly, because we have 2 positions that are coming open. The senior accredited one is in this short order, and the other appraiser, who currently right now is paid at a senior, but what my proposal is we don't replace him with a senior, have both of those, have the job ad cover both of those positions. So kind of have a larger gamut of see what's out there for appraisers, see what's out there for either a trainee or somebody who's already accredited.
Well, and Mr. Chair, ultimately, this could be very beneficial to the county from a cost perspective, because we're having one of the 5 senior accredited that are at that pay scale who's retiring. The other one is moving on. That means there's 1 more left there, and if that person were to move into the ag, we'd have 3 accredited, and we wouldn't be paying the other 2 higher salaries.
3 seniors,
So-
yeah.
Do we have one of these 5, are they qualified for the agriculture position? Okay.
And I would
And I'm not
assume
saying that they would, get the job or anything like that, but we do have somebody there that could. Sure.
And they certainly are eligible to apply. And
Right,
that's what we
exactly.
want.
And then we'd backfill.
Right.
Keep
Mr.
going
Chair,
down.
my question would be, is you're talking about advertising for both, when in fact the person who's retiring, all right, will be retiring how many months from now?
Well,
A strong 2 months.
yeah.
So the person has not
So
given
I'm
their
wondering
notice.
the overlap if we hire them
We
sooner
didn't say
than-
hire, we said apply.
Open it up, but really it takes 2 to 3 months is
Okay,
what I always
okay,
identify
okay,
that
fine.
it takes
Just-
to
I
really
was just checking
find
to see what
somebody
that
and put them in
timeframe is.
place. Because you think of the couple weeks, well, I don't know if I need to go to that, but 2 to 3
Right.
months is what I
Okay.
identify as.
So do we need 2 motions on this one?
Just 1 motion to fill the senior accredited ag position.
But you wanted us to also give you the.
Yes, for the other. Again, this is kind of one of those, this is a replacement thing,
And
so I'm asking you a
backfill.
question that we've already.
Or fill.
I need some clarification yet. Okay, we have 3 titles with that credibility. Okay, and then we have other people that really have that, they have the same license or whatever. Now, are those people receiving the same kind of money as those other 3 are, that are?
The other 3, or the other senior accredited, correct?
Yes. And where you're trying to get to is really the senior accredited people get this much with the ag and commercial, so forth. Down here, just because you're senior accredited doesn't mean you will get the money that these people get. That's where we're going with
And
this,
my
right?
thought is because we
That's what-
don't have to have that
Understand,
many of them.
understand.
It's
Yeah.
good to have them, and it's good, again, the training, I'm not opposed to investing in folks getting that training, because they do add value, but to pay somebody at a higher level when we don't necessarily need to have them, I think that's our responsibility to make sure that we have that in check. It's not a big difference, I gotta tell you, it's
Yeah.
not a huge difference, we're not talking about huge money here, but we are talking about setting up expectations for new staff that
Yep.
come in about what occurs and what
You
positions
want
are
less
there.
chiefs and more Indians.
But I
Well,
still-
they're
I
doing
s-
the same work, but
I
yeah.
still need to back up a little bit. So do we have somebody in your office that'll have that credibility that won't be one of those 3 when this is all done?
No.
Well,
Well, I don't know, it depends
Well-
upon who gets the position, I
yeah,
guess.
Right,
it's
but I guess-
possible, but
Yeah,
that's, you
yeah.
know.
Okay.
But what you're saying, Mr. Wilson, and correct me if I'm wrong, is of these 2 positions we have 5 right now, correct? That are senior accredited in your department.
Correct.
So we'll have 2 will leave, so of those 2 that are leaving are senior accredited. Now, we have 2 still that could take over these positions if they, they apply and all that
If
stuff.
it's
Is that
I guess where I'm
When
really
did-
coming with this, let's say that you hired somebody else for that senior accredited position, and now we have somebody in the office that's still a senior accredited, but they're not one of the 3, they would receive the same wages they're
Oh, yeah, 'cause
making
that's
now.
where you're at.
Right.
As it
When
is
they
right now.
go, that's when you would replace that with,
If they
Yeah.
qualify,
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
yeah.
So Commissioner,
Lots accredited,
Mr. Chair, 2 are going, there's 3 left.
3 left. But,
So
right,
if they move
some-
that person into the position, then we just have the 3 senior accredited, or if they hire from outside, then we still got the
But
4.
they would backfill them, not with the senior credit.
That's right,
That's
right,
where we're
right.
going with this. Do we have all that clarified,
Clear
gentlemen?
as mud.
All
like
right,
you
any
said-
more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. We will be working on that, Glenn.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. or-
We're gonna get a test on this tomorrow.
You want to talk about the property tax system now?
That would be good.
What we need to do is look at the job descriptions and make sure that they're up to date.
Any more administrators report?
Yes, I have a few updates with that.
Thank you.
Thanks, have a
Thank
good
you.
day, Glenn, thanks.
Glenn, thank you.
One being to talk about the fact that we have a lot of turnover.
Well,
in a lot of
retirement's a
folks.
good thing, that-
Retirements are a good thing, and we want to make sure that we're giving departments the resources they need in a timely manner to be able to do this work, which takes 2 to 3 months per position often to replace. And so, thank you for being open to bringing these in a quicker fashion when we're talking about them, because it just is happening more and more than it used to. Update on some discussion we had recently regarding the Band of Ojibwe and the property trust application. I may have those words wrong. But thanks to Deb Lau and Brian, did some work while I was out last week, communicating and learning a little bit more about what this all means. I gotta tell you, I don't have a ton of answers yet or how it goes, but we've been in communication and got some names of people who may be able to help us a little bit more with this. I did issue a letter yesterday to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, reiterating what we've already discussed in wanting some time to deal with this. A 30-day extension is, from what I understand, a fairly reasonable request. We already kind of identified that we want that, but we reiterated directly with the Bureau of Indian Affairs instead of going through the state to identify we want some time to learn more about what this means and some time to process what our options, if any, are. I did get communication from both Richardson and Lee Township regarding this issue. The property is located within the boundaries of those 2 townships. They both identified that they, oppose this and are communicating with the Bureau of Indian Affairs to oppose this. Again, what that means exactly and what our ability is to influence that, I don't know for sure. But we do have that communication, and that was reiterated through our letter also that says, and it's not just us, we got other people that have questions about this and have concerns about it. What I would like to do is invite the Band of Ojibwe in to talk a little bit about what their plans are, to what their intentions are, to help us understand where they're coming from. So with your permission, I'd like to contact them and really touch base and invite them to one of our planning sessions or board meeting to.
Planning session, in my opinion.
And I guess a little open to when they're available, but at least within the next 30 days, we obviously need some more information. So as soon as possible, if it can be at a planning session in the short order, if it can be at a meeting that we call and bring them in to kind of learn about what they're thinking.
Would you guys be open to a special meeting if they can't get
Not a
in?
problem.
If needs be, yeah, if needs be.
Mr. Chair, when we're talking about this, and if this is a piece of life or part of life, that's life, I got it. But it just seems to me, and I don't know the answer to it, obviously, it doesn't sound like anybody else does either, that if the tribe owns property anywhere in Morrison County, that one day they can just say, you know what, we're not gonna pay tax on it anymore. I would really like to hear that that is absolutely a fact before it happens. We can invite the tribe in here and they can say, well, here's the deal, guys. We've got 3,000 acres in wherever, in Morrison County, and we're not paying tax on it anymore. Okay, good with me. That doesn't make any sense to me. How about if I come in tomorrow and I say, I'm not paying tax on my property anymore, and I got it, I'm not
And there are
part of the tribe.
different laws that
Yeah,
govern the
but
tribes and Native
we should, if we don't really know the answer to those laws, I think that we should bring somebody with that knowledge, and no disrespect to anybody here today, and Brian's not here, no disrespect to Brian, but I don't think Brian knows that. If there's somebody out there that, yep, I realize, we gotta pay him to get the answer, then we need to do that.
And I do have a name of a gentleman who works on this, an attorney that specializes in this, and so I certainly can give him a call and let you know what that would entail. But yes, I can't say that I know all the answers, and I don't think Deb does, and Brian's admitted.
Well, maybe I'm wrong in making the statement, and if I am, jump all over me. I'm okay with
My
it, but I
point
don't
would
get
be,
it.
do we have any skin in the game? Do we
That's-
have any say-so anyway? So
Absolutely.
if we don't have say-so, why even bring it up anymore?
Mr. Chair, go ahead, Deb, you go first.
Yeah, we basically have the 30-day extension if we're granted to make any comments that we see fit in order to propose to the Secretary of the Interior, and they make the decision. They will take any comments we make into consideration. Now, I'm trying to get this 16-page document that the Mille Lacs band submitted to see what their concerns were when they proposed to put this into trust, because that might give us some kind of leg to stand on, it might not. Because really, the Title 25 law that I read stating, you know, what the secretary is gonna base their decision on, just says, you know, if it's within or on the treaty or on the reservation or next to the reservation, then the secretary is likely to include it. Well, they consider the reservation to be anything that's within treaty land, and the 1855 treaty and the 1937 treaty basically incorporates most of Minnesota. So,
And the point I would have, gentlemen, if I'm a part of the tribe, and okay, I got land, and now you agree to this, now my land is next to Mike's land or other land, when does it end?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that would be a federal
And I'm
law.
also looking for, who is the magic person that says, yes, you can have 30 days or not? Is that the governor's office?
no, that's Diane Rosen, the director of the Bloomington office for the Bureau of Indians.
And just magically, she has, I'm just asking, she has the power to say, let's see, yep, Morrison County, you can have 30 days.
Well, I don't know what her criteria is, I don't know what she looks at, I don't know enough about it. I know we have the right to ask for an extension, and we're hoping we get that so we can learn
And
more.
Deb made a good point, this is federal, and
Yeah.
boy,
We're gonna ask, I have no idea what her discretionary authority is, what process she has to go through, I have no idea, I don't know anything about it. It showed up last, 2 Mondays ago. and
Mr. Chair, first of all, my first question is that this has to be done by Wednesday unless we have an extension.
Right.
So, have we answered the question in case they don't give us the extension?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I did find out that our deadline is the 29th. That's our official
Of
deadline.
February.
Of
Okay.
February.
Okay.
6 days.
So we have a couple of days left. The letter does state that we can request a 30-day extension, and those are normally granted.
And we did that, and so we're covered within that time period.
We did that providing we get the extension. If we
Right.
don't get the extension, then we need an answer.
We
Right.
still provided them, the state, the information that they requested not last week, but the week before,
Okay.
when we had that meeting. So we did provide that, and that was that whole,
Where
we
we
needed to
stand.
provide to the
Where we
state
stand.
Yep.
in a certain time period, all of that, like this, and this, and we put that, that
Right.
was put together and provided. But in addition to that, we also reiterated to the
Yep.
Bureau, directly to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, that we would like an extension to further comment and pull together our thoughts on this.
And,
And as much
my-
as we know and don't know, Mille Lacs County has dealt with this a lot. And we are working with some people from Mille Lacs County and maybe some attorneys that they've had that work specialized with this, so we know where we're at. So we are on top of what we know at the moment.
And personally, I would rather have a little bit more information before we invite the tribe here to see, what questions to ask, if, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
Right now, I don't know really nothing other
Well-
than they wanna,
Well, we don't know what their intentions are with that. I think it would be great to have communication in terms of saying, well, what's your plan? So our constituents who are living in that area, who know that, can know. The band did go to, I don't know if it was Richardson
Lee
or
Township.
Lee.
It was Lee Township.
It was Lee Township, and did some information sharing with them. I'd love to have that happen also here, but in addition, in concert with that, we don't have much time, that's the problem.
Well, the 29th, if we don't get the extension, it's over.
Well, regardless, we've identified what our position is. We've said what it is we would
Right.
like to happen, which is not to go to trust. If they make that decision by the 29th instead of give us an extension, I mean, we did what we could based upon what information we have.
When we talked about this here, when you talked about having it at a planning session or whatever, I'd like a little discussion on that, because if the band was here, I would like to see it at a regular board meeting, so they're on camera and stuff like we are, so that the general public can see the exact same thing that we're seeing, because otherwise it's gonna be a planning session that we work on for an hour, and then we're gonna bring 10 minutes worth of information to them, and I'd like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would like everybody to see exactly what we hear and how we're going to approach this. But that's just my opinion.
And at the same time, Mr. Chair, I have to, it pains me sometimes, but I have to agree with you on this, is so the band is here, so the tribe is here. I have to be honest. Hello, tribe? I don't have a clue what I'm gonna say to you. Or is it that it's what they're gonna say to me?
Exactly.
Yes.
I have questions. I have what's your intention?
Yep.
Why is this happening now?
Yep.
What has changed that has pushed you in a position to, or compel you in a position to do this? What's different? You've owned this land for decades. What is now changed that makes you want to do this? What plans do you have for the property? Are you gonna build stuff? Are you gonna leave it vacant? Are you gonna do whatever it is? They're the ones who know well, they're the ones who can be posed those questions, and what they choose to, share with us. I hope we can develop that relationship, because there's nothing to say that anybody can't buy land and anybody can do that, and different laws govern them. I'd like to learn more about it.
Mine would be a little more, are you gonna buy a house on a lake and take it off the tax roll?
Well, and that
start
would,
buying it around the lake?
that would be my question, but people can say whatever they want to.
Right.
What law out there is, I guess would be my question, and I know we don't have the answer.
No, it's in that letter.
What